Good morning, members. Welcome to the first meeting of the Economy and Resources Committee. It's gone 10:30 by my watch, so we shall make a start. We have a number of important reports to consider this morning, which I anticipate we'll deal with in our usual efficient manner. So item 1 is SEDERUNT and apologies. Claire, can you provide SEDERUNT and any apologies, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. We've got 19 members present this morning. Apologies from Councillor Wood. Councillor McClelland currently not present.
Thank you, Claire. Item 2 is declarations of interest. Do any members wish to make a declaration of interest? Councillor Martin.
It's just on, what one is it? The item 8, very quite well known to Deputy Assessor, like, as he's my partner's brother-in-law. But I don't think there's any need to leave the meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor James.
Yes, good morning, Chair. Town Centre Living Fund, I have tried to engage with that in the past, but I think that is only sort of to increase my knowledge of it, and I would like to comment on that without any bias to my own position. Thank you.
Okay, any other member? Councillor Nicholl.
I'm confused with Councillor James's intervention there. Just I could do with a little bit more explanation.
Yes, sorry. Okay, so I think I went as far as making an application to it in the not too recent past, and I think that application has informed my knowledge of it, and I'd like to contribute to the debate around it. And I think that's reasonable, and I will do it.
Well, declarations of interest and how the member wishes to handle them are a matter for the member. It is on the record. I have a declaration of interest in item 14, application 18, Dalbeattie Primary School, as I'm a member of the steering group, and application 20, Town Centre Living Fund, Castle Douglas, as my partner is employed by the Dumfries and Galloway Small Communities Housing Trust. I don't believe there are any further declarations of interest. I'll offer a final opportunity. In that case, we shall move on to item 3. Item 3 is delegation to Economy and Resources Committee, report by Director of Communities. This report provides us with information on the delegations made by full council to this committee in June 2019 and is for noting. Claire is here to assist if members have any questions. Is there anything that you wish to add? Okay, in that case I shall open it to members' comments and questions. This is a straightforward procedural matter. Are we content to go to the recommendation? We're asked to note the remit of Economy and Resources Committee as detailed at paragraph 3.2. Are we content to note? Thank you. Item 4 is Local Development Plan 2, MOFFAT Conservation Area Character Appraisal and Management Plan, report by Head of Economy and Development. This report provides an update on the consultative draft supplementary guidance MOFFAT Conservation Area Character Appraisal and Management Plan following the recent public consultation. Marie Marshall and Steve Rogers are here to respond to any questions members may have on the report. Is there anything either of you would like to add at this point?
Nothing further to add, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, comments, questions? Councillor Thompson?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It was just more to commend officers in supporting the community who'd sort of originally kind of worked with officers to try and bring this forward. I think it makes total sense that it's going out to a second round because obviously there was some quite strong feedback about certain areas that should or shouldn't be included in the plan, so happy to see this go out for a second consultation.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Any other member? It appears we're going to make rapid progress today. It might be something to do with the temperature of the chamber. In that case, we'll turn to the recommendations. Are we content to note 2.1, agree 2.2, the Council's proposed response set out in Appendix 2, 2.3, consider the general responses received and agree the Council's response and proposed modifications in Appendix 3, 2.4, agree that the amended proposed boundary changes are included in a revised version of the consultative draft supplementary guidance, etc. And at 2.5, receive a report back to this committee with the outcome of the second public consultation, along with any proposed changes before considering adopting supplementary guidance. Thank you very much. Thank you both. Item 5 is a report on the Climate Emergency Declaration, Implementation and Resources, report by Director Economy and Resources. The committee is presented with information on the Climate Emergency Declaration agreed at full council on 27th June 2019. In making this declaration, members agreed a 12-point plan of commitments and determined that the implementation of the plan would be overseen by a climate emergency cross-party working group. In agreeing the declaration, full council was clear that we wished the commitments to progress at pace and to ensure that there is early action to demonstrate our commitment, and that we would receive a report at this meeting which provides advice on resourcing and implementing the agreed 12-point plan, including the establishment of the cross-party working group. Simon Fieldhouse and Sheila Mohan are here to assist with any questions members may have on the report. Is there anything either of you would like to add at this point?
Nothing to add, Chair.
Thank you very much. Open this to members. Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Welcome this report. I very much see this as the starting point in relation to our response to our climate emergency declaration. Just an observation, 3.412 in relation to Citizens Panel. I hope members agree with me that the Citizens Panel is going to be very much integral and should reflect our response to the climate emergency. And I see this as an opportunity to harness the skills and experience that exist out there across Dumfries and Galloway. Clearly, the working group is going to have the opportunity to discuss this in more detail, but I think it's worth pointing out how important I feel this will be to how we move forward. A couple of other things. It's Scotland will have a climate week. I don't know much detail of it at this stage in early October. And I think this would be very much a good week to convene the inaugural meeting of the cross-party working group. And I also am fully supportive of the proposal to appoint a project officer to support the development of our strategic plan and most importantly, to ensure that activities are coordinated right across all council activities, and it's not just seen as one individual or one team that is responsible for our response, that should be reflected across the whole council. So just general observations, no questions for officers. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Councillor Hagman.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to officers for bringing this forward. I think it is, it's pertinent that we do move rapidly. We've declared an emergency. Let's get it moving. So I'm really pleased that the first meeting of this committee, it's on the agenda. So thank you for bringing that forward. I just wanted to ask, in terms of the 20th of September, there's a call for global strike in terms of the climate. Do we as a council have a response to that? If we have our young people who are looking to, obviously, we're not here sitting in the Education Committee, but, are we as a council looking to support? Do we have any strategies going forward, or even acknowledging the fact that there is a global strike happening on the 20th of September? My second question was following on from Councillor Campbell about the putting the resources towards new posts within the council, which I think is crucial. At this point, do we know, is that going to be internally sourced, or is it going to be externally advertised, or is it going to be open to all? Because it's, I think it's really crucial that we get the correct person to lead this forward.
Thank you, Councillor Hagman. Lorna, you want to take what point?
Chair, I just want to take the matter of recruitment. Obviously, the Council's HR policies reflective of redeployment opportunities internally have been set by members within our policy, so we would follow normal HR processes in that regard to recruit to this post.
So it would be an internal recruitment?
In the first instance, and if that was unsuccessful, then we would go external, but our first response is always to look for internal resources.
Simon?
Thank you, Chair. In relation, obviously, to the climate strike that Councillor Hagman's sort of referenced on the 20th of September, at present we don't have a position from the Council. We'd need to obviously work with colleagues within Commons to identify what position the Council may have or support on that.
Thank you. Archie?
Thanks very much, Chair. I think it's really important that we get this implementation resource, and absolutely right. So in recommendation 2.4, perhaps a slight amendment to that, and is that we will fund this position up to March, April next year, and then as part of the budget setting process, if we're going to be serious, then we want to see this individual as part of the structure, and then take that forward as part of the budget setting process, Chair.
Yeah, very much in agreement with that. I think that's a good idea. We don't want to limit, I think, our ambition in that regard. So making a start on it, but then with a view to augmenting what we're doing. I think, in all likelihood, informed by the work of the working group, would be a sensible way forward. Councillor Nicholl, and then I'll bring Councillor Campbell back in.
Thanks, Chair. 2 or 3 things here. How do we see this working group being formed? It says one from each group or grouping. Well, there's a difference between a group and a grouping. Citizens panel, what's the size of this citizens panel going to be, and where are they going to come from? Is it right across Dumfries and Galloway? You're going to get people from Stranraer or Dromore or Langham? And dedicated officer, is that going to be a full-time post or a part-time post? And what's the cost likely to be?
Okay, number of questions there. Simon, if you can assist.
Thank you, Chair. In relation to the citizens panel, obviously we are looking at that as being bringing together expertise from across the region. The exact format and size of that citizens panel will depend very much on the recommendations that come out of the cross-party working group to ensure that it is holistic, it is as inclusive as it possibly can be, but it's actually manageable in terms of making sure we can actually get the group to define actions and look at how we can obviously learn and ensure that there is enough information coming from the citizens panel that is actually relevant and helpful to officers and obviously to the council in terms of defining the policy and the strategic action plan. The other question was in relation to the funding for the post, I believe. And obviously what we're looking at this moment in time is we are looking at a full-time post, and the funding, I believe, is that referenced within the report? Not specifically. I believe we've referenced a figure within the report that would include obviously salary for that member of staff. We would have to go through an HR process to establish and create that post, which would then be graded through the council's HR processes. So I couldn't give you an exact cost at this moment in time, Councillor.
Councillor Nicholl, you want to come back?
Could I come back? It's to do with this, with the citizens panel. Are you going to put an advert in the local papers? Are you going to ask community councils to nominate people? I mean, how are you going to find these people? That's my question.
Thank you, Chair, through yourself. Obviously, the citizens panel, there are not very many established at this moment in time, so we are working and looking at how other local authorities are looking at establishing their citizens panels. We have some information on how other external advisory groups are set up. Some are done through, I suppose, inviting expressions of interest, looking at going broader and asking people to fill out application forms to give an understanding as to the role and the skill set they could bring to the table. Others are obviously looking more at trying to get a better geographical spread, so we'll be looking at going through community councils. Again, that detail hasn't been looked at in a significant format as yet to provide a detailed answer on those things. We're hoping that as we can establish the cross-party working group, that we can define that answer as part of that process.
Councillor Nicholl?
Just to come back to the membership of the working group, suggest that all political groups or groupings nominate one member each. Or does that mean the administration get one, that's a grouping? Or do you know, how's this going to work? Need more detail, please.
You take the governance point, Laura?
And members, when they agreed the climate emergency declaration in June, I think there was a considerable debate at committee, and one of the tenors of that notice of motion that was agreed as part of that declaration was that it was essential for cross-council political leadership on this. So the position that officers have taken in bringing forward this report is that reflecting that debate was that it was to be inclusive and to bring members together across the political groups to work on this, because there was certainly, I think, a unanimity of view at full council. So we haven't brought forward anything that suggests proportionality or any other distribution, that this was a working group. It wouldn't be decision making, it would be providing advice and recommendations to committee or committees, and would be working with that citizens panel. So in our sense was that to reflect that debate and that ambition was to provide something that would be inclusive. But of course it's for this committee to decide how it wishes to establish that cross-party working group.
Okay. I'm going to continue with first-time speakers, although I have not forgotten about Councillor Campbell. I reflect that there was not entire unanimity at full council. Councillor James.
Thank you. I remember that temperate day when we made the bold decision, and there was a lot of anecdotal evidence, including our champion who had first-hand knowledge of a dry spell that happened in 2018, and the great seer Greta Thunberg was mentioned, and the predictions of catastrophic sea level and temperature rise were put forth. And I mean, I must believe I was actually sceptical at the time that we could actually turn things around as quickly as we've done so. And since then we've seen almost continuous rain and very cold temperatures. So fair play. It's a great effort by the champion. We could take 2 or 3 approaches here in such a situation. We could actually declare an actual emergency and treat it as an emergency. We could instruct the council safety team to go out and kill all pets that eat meat. We could remove child benefit. We could leave Scotland's oil in the ground where it deserves to be, or we could, in a second scenario, go ahead and pay lip service to a perceived problem, like we're doing, create a working group, which won't do anything but just gum up our system with more expense and inefficiency. Or we could, as I suggested last time, endeavour to just have a reasonable attack where we would reduce pollution where possible and increase our efficiency right across the board. And I think by taking on another just administrative challenge, we're way out of line with what the mainstream public would like us to do. And so I would like to throw open today to see if there's anybody who would like to support a motion along the lines that I proposed last time of a more sensible approach to how we go about our normal business.
Thank you for the input, Councillor James. We do already have a decision of full council, I think, and this committee is tasked with implementing it. I shall move on to Councillor Nicholson. Yes, please.
Sorry, I was still taking what Councillor James was saying there. Just not sunk in yet, but there's normal business. There is normal business. There is something that's, this paper is ambitious. But I understand about having some kind of clarity and some kind of aims and ways forward without being woolly and setting up groups. But this, I believe this is right what you're trying to do here, and by creating a working group, but maybe you can give us some clarity on what's actually happening now, because when all of this is happening, I was at a meeting just a few days ago, and there's groups in the communities. They want to do something now. They're actually writing things into their procedures within them groups, how to tackle in a climate, anything they can do within them groups. So there are people out there now, especially young people, who want to do something now. They don't want to wait. They want involvement. They maybe want involvement in the citizens groups as well. I don't know, but. It's something that is out there, and I believe we should be going forward at a pace that's reflected with the public out there, and the public out there are wanting something done now.
Certainly echo the comments. I think the public expect us to be demonstrating progress. I think that is a very fair point. Simon, if you want to respond.
No, thank you, Chair. I mean, obviously, as referenced, there are an awful lot of activities from community levels to individuals who are undertaking sort of steps to look at their carbon footprint and how they can affect climate change. The Scottish Government has just running a series of workshops on the sort of the climate legislation and obviously local perceptions on that. The Council obviously has taken a stance in terms of through the Carbon Management Plan and the Carbon Management Plan 2 to look obviously how it can effectively reduce its emissions and obviously sort of reduce some of its expenditure as well. There should be a report that we come back to the next committee with regard to the climate duties reporting, which I believe is looking at a 42% reduction in our emissions against the base levels that we've had. So things are moving forward. I think what's lacking potentially at a regional level is obviously some coordination, which this might help to address.
Thank you, Simon. Councillor Nicholson? And
I do understand what you're saying there, but again, it gets back to the point that, all these things, all the things you've spoken about there doesn't reach down to what's happening now, and people are doing something now in their own. And what you want is this coordination. You want to see how you can encourage them to carry that forward, how the best efficient way to do things are, there's ambition out there. Let's feed into that.
I do very much take the point. Bridging that gap is absolutely essential. Councillor Dryburgh, I think it was on that very point.
Yeah, I think you're right. There is things going on in the council. So, for instance, at the moment we've got a group of the Eco Warriors, the Solway Firth Partnership, Friends of the Earth, Dumfries Recycling Group, meeting, discussing about the waste process going forward, and they have been very helpful in what they've been actually trying to do. But I think getting this working group together will bring it all together, and you will understand what the outcome of that is actually going to be.
Okay. Councillor Carruthers.
Thank you, Chairman. I find it a very interesting debate. I think the council appointed our lead, and that was Councillor Campbell. We made it absolutely clear at full council. I do think we have a ruling in regards to revisiting a particular policy within 6 months, and that would probably be applied today, maybe unfortunately, for David in this instance, because he's wanting to be his voice heard. But I do, going back to what Councillor Nichols said, I do think it should come from each group rather than grouping. I think there's a level of expertise within all groups that would like to be on this. So taking into consideration what Matt's saying, I think the administration would only be at point one at that time, would be my understanding, because they are a grouping. So I think there's probably 2 experts on your group in particular would want to be in that. Due diligence when it comes to what Councillor Dryburgh's presented in regards to let's just go on and fund this. I think we have to look at that seriously. I think, can we actually do that? We haven't got any figures in regards to how much that will cost. Certainly agree with the principle of putting somebody in place, getting this moving. But personally, I don't think we have to. I think we should be identifying funding where that comes from and how much that is. We haven't actually got those figures today, so I think in principle we would agree with that. But I don't think we should be doing that today. But we should be allowing our appointed champion, who's leading this on behalf of the council, to drive us forward in as quick and as expedited way as he possibly can, Chairman, if that's a possibility.
Okay, thank you for that. Certainly, as regards to the constitution of the working group, it had certainly been my impression that we did not want to artificially limit its membership. That would seem to be counterproductive, given the need for a genuine cross-party and collegiate approach to this issue. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm actually just revisiting action point 10 on page 36, which is to do with the action point 9, I beg your pardon, getting ahead of myself. It's to do with the actual citizens panel. And it sort of touches maybe on what Councillor Nicholl was saying a little bit. I think it might seem counterintuitive, but I think we actually have to avoid or be wary or pay particular attention to seeking expertise over and above representation, because we're not really asking to set up an advisory panel of experts. What we're actually trying to do is recognise that in actually trying to do this, it's going to be affecting all people. So there are those who may have a lot of knowledge about certain activities that have a high climate tariff, if you like, and there's everybody else who goes about their business who may not have the same knowledge, but is effectively the economy and the people of this region. So I think we have to kind of be careful about how representative that panel is, and not draw only from a particular interest group, but also draw on the stakeholders who are going to be affected by the decisions that group might recommend. So it's really just to have that wee word of caution there. So I'm looking at 3.4.12, page 32. So we're establish it in line with community participation and engagement, which I presume would be broad, representative, and be, for example, agricultural sector, other businesses, etc., who might not be climate experts, but they're certainly going to be affected by the way we're going to go forward and do business. And I think it'd be well worth it to have everybody on board rather than being told what to do.
Now, you'll know that notwithstanding reports to the contrary, I prefer having people on board than telling them what to do. I do think that is a very good point in the broader context of this important piece of work. Leader.
Thanks, Chair. I suppose just in response to Councillor James' point, the fact that it's raining outside and it feels like an icebox in here doesn't mean to say that climate change isn't happening, because climate change actually also causes increase in the amount of storms, hurricanes and that sort of thing. So I don't think we can be complacent just because there's been a change in the weather patterns. But maybe more seriously, I think that the point that Councillor Nicholson made about the need to show leadership and for other groups to see the council showing leadership is important. And that's not just about having workshops on legislation and that sort of thing. We actually need to be seen to be doing things and making the community aware that things are happening. And I think, with that regard, I think some of the ideas that came out of the transport transformation meeting the other session, workshop, I should say, the other week, were actually very radical. And I think actually we want to look at some of those proposals fairly rapidly and adopt them, because I think that would show that the council was actually serious in terms of trying to tackle not just the expense of people travelling around, but also just as importantly, the climate aspects of the climate emergency issues around that, as well as the amount of travelling that we do that maybe is not necessary. So I'm quite enthusiastic about some of the ideas that came forward at that workshop, and that we can maybe take those forward, and that will be a demonstration to like the young people that Councillor Nicholson has been talking about, that the council also does take it seriously and is actually taking practical steps to address some of our own behaviours.
I think that's a very fair point. I think that we'll be judged on what we actually do in relation to this. This is the report that establishes building blocks, but we recognise, I think everybody recognises, that action has to follow rapidly from that, and we will be judged on whether or not that is effective, and whether or not it measures up to the ambitions of the wider public, I think. Councillor McComb.
Thanks, Chair. The Citizens Panel, there seems to be quite a degree of vagueness about this. How many individuals will comprise the panel? How will it be formed? Will it be by nomination? Will it be by invitation? Will it be on the basis of knowledge or perceived knowledge? Or will it be a representative group, representative of the wider views in the community? That is not clear at the moment from the paper.
My understanding is that that is an early piece of work for the working group to consider and bring back recommendations to this committee. However, Lorna, if you want to go into more detail.
And officers will be informed by the declaration that members agreed in June, and indeed by the debate today, and bring forward options for that to the working group, who will then make a recommendation back to this committee. So we expect to be back in November to establish that group and options to do that, hopefully with broad support across the cross-party working group, and indeed in discussions with those stakeholders, the wide range of stakeholders who are out there, and to engage with them about what would work and what we know from other authorities that have established similar citizens panels around this subject, some of the routes that they've taken as well. So we will cast that net wide, and we will bring back recommendations that the cross-party group provide to us.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. It's really a question about the Climate Emergency Officer, and I'm wondering what the remit of this person is going to be. I'm wondering who this person is going to be reporting to. And again, and at what level is he going to be, or he or she going to be reporting? Because really, taking Councillor James's point about practical steps, if we are going to succeed with this, we need to embed it in the entire organisation. And it maybe looks quite good appointing a climate emergency officer, but there's maybe an element of tokenism to that, when really it should be coming down from director level. Every department needs to be buying into this, and it's down to them to take the steps to make it happen. So if you could just enlighten me on the remit and the reporting structure.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Lorna? Simon, you're going to take that.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, this is still a very early piece of work. We are looking at what other local authorities across the UK are doing, and the level at which they are looking at appointing professional officers to support this advice. We will obviously work very carefully with colleagues within IHR and obviously with our senior management structure to look at how we can embed this particular post within the existing council structures to have that maximum benefit. But I can't give you an exact point in terms of where it would sit within the next structure at this moment in time.
Lorna, a bit further clarification.
Members will recall that you've made some strategic appointments to support things like anti-poverty, events, different things. We see this as being a role to coordinate and support all parts of the council. Members were clear this is everybody's job, this is embedded within what we do. You've agreed to bring forward another priority around this area, so we are clear that this, wherever it is line managed, it would have to be a role that supports a wide range and a wide group of staff to deliver on this ambition. But we need those resources to help with that coordination, to support that citizens panel and the members group, and to really support parts of the council that lead on this to make sure we do this effectively and quickly. So it is a really enabling role, and as Simon says, we'll take some advice and soundings with the cross-party working group about the role descriptor and indeed the supervision and the role of the group that will support at a tactical level members as an officer group as well. So we'll certainly engage members fully in this.
Thank you, Lorna. I'm going on to second-time speakers. Councillor Campbell.
Thanks, Chair. I think this is a great debate, and it clearly shows that members are serious about our response to the climate emergency. I think a lot of the questions that have been raised are to be part of the role of the cross-party working group to explore, and welcome the point that Lorna just made about the scoping out of the role of the project officer. Chair, I hope you can indulge me here. I've got a number of things to raise just in response to some of the issues that have come up during the debate. And first and foremost, I've got to thank Councillor James for his fulsome praise. Over recess in the last few weeks, I have been inundated by emails and phone calls from members of the public across the region, and I've met with a wide range of people, and I've only heard one person cast any doubt about the appropriateness of Dumfries and Galloway Council's response to climate change, and he is sitting in this room right now, the only person that I've had any negative feedback from. Councillor Hagman raised the question about the global school strike on 20th September. I had an inquiry within my own ward about this, and I sought guidance on it. And my understanding from Colin Grant is that it is a matter for head teachers to and how they wish to approach any potential strikes by pupils from their schools. I've got an email from Colin Grant that I'll need to just check if I can share it, because it's in response to an FOI inquiry. But my understanding is that the council doesn't have a policy as such, but schools should respect pupils' voice and treat any absence as a consequence of a strike as an authorised absence. A couple of points raised by Councillor Nicholson in relation to young people. From my perspective as the environment champion, I think we definitely should be engaging with young people, and I think the political response to the climate emergency has, to a large extent, been brought forward by young people, and I have had discussions with officers about involvement of young people, and this is something that we'll need to look at as part of the cross-party working group. But I will actually be meeting some of our youth councillors in the very near future, and my understanding is that our youth councillors across the region have identified climate change as their number one concern, and you know it's clear that they have to have an active part in any citizens panel that we take forward, whatever that looks like. I think there needs to be a broad reflection of people who live and work in the region. In terms of moving forward with a sense of urgency, when I drafted the 12-point plan, what I was primarily seeking to do was to ensure that climate change, response to climate change was threaded through everything that the Council does. So that's why, as Lorna mentioned, we have, I think it's number 1 or 2 in the action plan, that we have a new priority on climate change, and to ensure that it does cut across everything what we do. But I think it's very important that we get our house in order before we start to move forward in earnest with specific actions. But clearly, we've got the climate change bill going through the Scottish Parliament. I believe the UK Climate Change Committee is due to report in the very near future. And, you know, what comes from the Scottish Parliament and indeed the UK Parliament is vital important. It's something we have to take cognizance of. But I feel very strongly, because I've been getting a lot of pressure from people who are saying, what are you doing, when you're doing it, you need to be doing it now. But I think it's important that we ready the Council so that we can you know, reflect on what we've achieved in the last decade and what we need to do now to achieve carbon neutral status by 2025. That's it. I've nothing further to add, but hopefully that answers 1 or 2 of the questions that have been raised, and I'm happy to discuss with committee if anybody's interested to know about any other discussions that I've had, but clearly we don't have time at committee because we've taken up quite a lot of time in this particular item.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Councillor James.
Thank you. So not for the first time, Councillor Murray is absolutely spot on that anecdotal evidence is you know, not our friend here, and the cold dry spell alluded to was completely, you know, absolutely ridiculous to bring into the mix that would somehow be an indication there was some climate change going on. Jim Arthur, who was a golf greenkeeping agronomist guru, he actually has a great book, and he looked at records of golf clubs, and he found a golf club, or more than one instance of this, but any one particular golf club had around the turn of the century recorded 36 out of 40 years as unusual weather being the cause of the poor condition of the course. So, you know, we're not the first ones to fall into the trap of looking at a day and thinking about a decade. Councillor Johnson might like to support my amendment, which is to strike out 2.2 as it currently exists and to put in order to mitigate the potential for climate change and other environmental damage, this committee recommends that all departments prioritise pollution reduction and strive to increase efficiency with immediate effect. And 2.4 would probably fall out in that case as well. So if I could have a seconder for that, I would press on with the amendment. Thank you.
Could you advise us?
Okay. Crossing out 2.2, the working group was agreed to be established as part of the decision taken at full council, so that wouldn't be competent to remove that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Not agreeing the approach.
Thank you for the advice. Matters of competency rest with me. What you have suggested is incompetent based on the advice I've received. If you wish to have another attempt.
Well, that would seem like a reasonable approach, mine to me in my limited ability. Could I take guidance on what are my options?
I think in all fairness and with all due respect, that is a matter for the member in preparing for the committee. I'm moving to the recommendations.
How do I record my dissent?
By requesting it at the end of the recommendations. I am very happy to accommodate that.
No, I haven't put an amendment down.
At the risk of engaging in a protracted debate on governance, you put down an amendment which was quite clearly not competent. Since it seeks to overturn a decision of full council, that is not within the gift of this committee, and particularly with reference to the 6-month rule, which would require the demonstration of material change of circumstances at full council. I am, however, very happy to see that your dissent is recorded once we have gone through the recommendations, which we will proceed to now. Members, are we content to note 2.1? Are we content to agree the approach to establish a climate emergency cross-party working group at 2.2? 2.3.
On a point of order, I was under...
Which point of order?
The one I'm about to give you.
Well, for my benefit, they are numbered in standing orders. It would assist me.
4-ish.
God loves a trier, Councillor James, and so do I. I'll entertain it this time.
So my point of order is that I have in previous other committees been told that I needed to have an amendment down in order to be able to dissent, but is that then in the gift of the chair?
Councillor Nicholson.
I don't know if it'd be helpful, like, if Councillor James put forward an amendment for 2.2 that just refers to parts of Appendix 2 taken out, because that's not been decided. That is a part of the decision today. So if he did that, I suppose that would give him a... just so we don't put that things out forever and ever and ever.
We could do that, Councillor Nicholson, but we have already agreed 2.2. In an effort to be...
you haven't allowed my dissent anyway,
in an effort to be
done,
collegiate and reasonable, it is not massively out of line with the practice in other committees that I have served on, whereby dissent is permitted to be recorded, as my understanding. We had reached 2.3, where we're asked to note the considerations and resources required to support the Council to deliver the 12-point plan, etc. Are we content to note that? At 2.4, Archie, you had a slight change of words there. Could you perhaps give us that?
Yeah, Chair, it's to agree with the request that Finance, Procurement Transfer Committee allocates funding from the Council Change Fund for the resources required to implement the 12-point plan of commitments to the end of March 2020. And then for further years, it would be included in the budget setting process for Council to make decision. And I think that structure then would be a positive way of going forward, because that individual would be in the structure then.
Would members be content to agree that?
Chair,
Councillor Hagman?
Can I just ask, how would that work in terms of advertising a position? Because obviously if we're looking for somebody to take this forward, we need... Would we just be... we would only be able to advertise for a temporary position, which would then perhaps limit the applications coming forward. I'm aware that many jobs within the environment sector work on short-term contracts, and I'm aware that that's across the whole sector. And I'm just concerned that if we limit that with those stipulations, it wouldn't allow us to advertise for a position to take forward. It would limit. It would only be a temporary post that we'd be able to advertise for. But I'd be willing, I'd be interested to hear from the officers on that one.
Chair, if I can come in, and at the end of the day, what we're looking here is to get that position full-time into the structure, and that is done through the budget setting process, through the budget setting there. At the moment, because it's out of the change fund, it would only be, a part-time position anyway. But we want to make sure that this is in the structure in the future. So therefore, it would go ahead as a short-term contract, but the potential is that it goes full-time.
Yes, I take the point. Unless it is fully embedded, then the change fund necessarily means that it will come to an end unless members make a decision to continue its funding as a permanent post. Councillor Nicholson, you were trying to attract my attention. Councillor James.
Post were to lead to some success, then they might work themselves out of the job. And since we have a no compulsory redundancy policy, then we're predicting failure by making this permanent post, obviously.
Councillor James, I do believe I'm going to enjoy having you on this committee. I note what you say. Are members content that we agree the amended 2.4 is set out by Councillor Dryborough, which I am happy to second? Okay, I will take it that is agreed. In 2.5, note that regular updates will be provided to this committee on the work of the cross-party working group and on progress with the Climate Change Strategic Action Plan. I'm content to note that. I think I would emphasise that it will be important that we do see concrete progress in early course. I think that's what the public expect of us. Thank you for a robust debate on that, members. Councillor James, your dissent will be recorded. We'll move on to item 6. And thank you both very much. Item 6, Living Wage Consolidation, report by Head of People and Transformation. We are asked to consider this report, which outlines the options to enable the Council to meet the commitment made in the national pay deal agreed in March 2019 to consolidate the Scottish Local Government living wage into our pay and grading structure. Members will recall that the pay deal reached at a national level committed all local authorities to consolidate the living wage as their minimum pay level by March 2021 at the latest. The report highlights that this Council has, over a number of years, maintained the Scottish Local Government living wage for all our employees, but that has been paid as a supplement to their pay. Policy and Resources Committee in June 2019 agreed to receive this report for member decision on meeting the national pay deal agreed within our local pay structures. Stuart Clanahan, HR Manager, is here to respond to any questions members may have on the report. Stuart, is there anything you'd like to add?
Nothing extra, Chair.
Thank you very much. Members, comments, questions? Councillor James?
I don't want to be seen to be hogging it, but it's an important issue and I think we need to come in on it. Right, in an unprepared way then. The minimum wage, and this is the living wage, of course, is a very good thing, and it's absolutely essential that people's work is valued, and particularly through a period where we've had unrestricted immigration, giving employers access to an infinite labour pool. The only way to protect workers and give them a sensible amount for what they do is some sort of minimum wage structure. So until we restore the supply and demand curves back, then we have to have a minimum wage. It's a great thing, but we're not in any sense an efficient employer, and I don't know if other councillors find this, but there are times when even a council officer is not acting in a way that we think is extremely efficient, and there isn't a very good way to criticise them, and they are there for life, and you know they're not. There's a lot of lack of accountability in the council. There are too many councillors in each ward, so no one's can point the finger really efficiently there. There are too many mistakes and a lack of diligence within the council that councillors can't point to, and it's a very convoluted process, and I don't know if that can be streamlined at all, or if anybody can give me tips as to how we could actually address the situation when we feel that the service offered by the council is substandard. Our no compulsory redundancy policy is clearly ridiculous in when we're trying to reduce staffing. It's almost sorry.
Can I ask, are we keeping to this agenda item, are we straying off it? This is due with consolidation to a living wage, we either do or we don't.
It is a very fair point, Councillor Nicholson.
On
the item?
No, we have the council priorities here, and not on it is to be a good employer. Now, obviously, that's because we think that's not our first priority, but it seems our whole staffing policy revolves around being the best employer we can be, as in we give a job for life. So, and things like building an economy, we ignore most of the time. Providing the best start for life, we do our best to encourage children to get off to a good start, and then they have to go elsewhere to find employment because we haven't done the first priority. But does that sit as a priority for the council, how it treats its workforce? Is that part of our priority list, and where is it?
It's reflected in the commitments we made in the council plan, actually, from memory. I can't point to the right page, so I'm not just going to pick out that.
The point is that it appears to be our highest priority in the way we go about our business.
Don't interrupt me, Councillor.
Sorry.
Do you have a question on the report?
Started with that one.
Not a question on the report. I am moving on. Is there any other member? Councillor Carruthers.
Thank you. I mean, I think when we look at this, you see there's a 824k, I think, financial pressure. 847, sorry, it's saying in paragraph 3.9 to the council, and we're going forward. I mean, I think everybody would agree with the principle of supporting this. We're a living wage council, clearly. But you look at the impact assessment, and so it's been through that process. I haven't seen the finer detail of that, but I just wondered, in regards to that assessment and the level of transformation that we're going through over the next three and a bit years, what impact will this have, this wider decision today? I would imagine it'll go through. It's the right thing as a good employer to be doing, bringing everything into order. But there's obviously clear consequences to the level of services that we provide, the impact that'll have on budget decisions. I just wonder if that's been considered in regards to the wider council, or is that away from here?
I do take the point. Stuart, are you able to expand a little?
Thank you, Chair. Just giving the elected members some assurance around that, and we've had detailed conversations with our Head of Finance colleagues, etc. There is a firm commitment to implement it. The funding is available for implementation from April next year, and it's fully included in all of the financial projections that are presented in front of you.
Councillor Carruthers,
I thought it's probably the answer we get. So I'd imagine we'll have to pick up on this through the budget process to see what impact this really has on the services as we go forward. Because ultimately, we haven't gone back to refer to. We've referred it to ourselves as a group many times in the wider council. We do have a no compulsory redundancy policy. That is having an effect on the wider staff, I think, as well as the decisions that we're making. So we need to take all these things into consideration. I think it's an important point that's brought up, but ultimately it probably will be dealt with through the budget process.
I believe that it would be, but certainly the figures that you allude to, which are set out over the kind of 3-year period, will have to be built into the budget model, and they will therefore be pressures. It is the right thing to do, but we have to understand the consequences of it. It's not free, that is for sure. Councillor Hagman.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a very small point, really. I mean, I would never go to make any assumptions on people's income within this room, but certainly I can speak from a personal point of view. I sit and I receive working tax credits because I am on a low income, believe it or not. And I think anything this council can do to support our employees that are on a low income should be supported and taken forward from this council. So I just wanted to thank the officers for the work on here and taking this forward, because I think it's crucially important that we support our employees and that we actually pay them a fair wage.
Thank you, Councillor Hagman. Councillor James.
Yes, so the reason I asked the question is that if we don't establish where it sits in our list of priorities, the way we deal with our employees, then how can we judge what our policy should be as regards, for example, compulsory redundancy? And if we don't have that policy correct, then it's very difficult to address issues like how are we going to pay the wages. So my question is that then to be taken as below 4 on our list of priorities?
With respect to, is it best tangentially related to the matter in hand, which is determining how we implement a nationally negotiated pay and conditions measure?
Yes, well, one way would be to reduce the amount of employees and pay the remaining ones more, wouldn't it?
Then you can bring forward a budget proposal that includes that. Leader?
Thanks. I think there's a few red herrings swimming around here. This isn't about compulsory or no compulsory redundancy. This is about the way in which we treat our lowest paid employees. And at the moment, because we rightly took on the payment of the living wage, people that on the lowest scales working for our council are not getting the differentials which they would get if they were a higher wage, if they were a higher paid employee of the council. And to my mind, this is about fairness to the lowest paid employees of our council, and I think we should definitely be doing. Trade unions have been asking for this for some time. Some other councils have already done it, and I think it's about time that we did it.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Nicholson.
Yeah, completely agree with the leader. I think there's, we're in danger here. We should be a proud council. This council was the first to introduce the living wage in Scotland, and it's something that we are building on. It's something we have, this is a next step, next stage if you want, putting in our wages and I think we should be proud of it. We're in danger of making us look an uncaring council if we go down some of the routes that's been suggested here.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholson. Councillor Carruthers.
I just think, because of the last couple of comments in particular, I think it's right, we absolutely should support this, but I think it would be absolutely neglectful of this committee if it didn't take into consideration the knock-on consequence to this decision. It will come through the budget process, but another point we could bring up, okay, if this is the first stage, let's look at our commissions in the wider community. Okay, are we absolutely sure that we're making sure that the companies out there in the wider, Dumfries and Galloway and wider, are paying their employees the living wage? I mean, so we've got to be very, very thoughtful around about the regards to, okay, it's the right thing to be a living wage employee, but there's a consequence to that, and we have to consider that, and we've already alluded it's through the budget process, and that is where it'll be dealt with, but it would be neglectful for us not to at least recognise that as part of the debate through this actual agenda item.
Thank you for the comment. We will go, I think, Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, Chair, I've been keeping out of this, but the paper's here, and I think it is a good paper. We should be welcoming the paper in the living wage consolidation. I don't think it should be the workers that should bear the brunt of the cuts, austerity in the local government. So I think we should welcome the move to a living wage by our those on the lower scale of our wage scales. We are a low wage, low economy. It's a small step, but it's one in the right direction in starting to deal with the massive poverty within our region. So let's start here in trying to deal with that with our own workers and not have them bearing the brunt of cuts in local government.
Thank you, Councillor Scobie. We shall move to the recommendations. Members 2.1 were asked to note the financial costs associated with consolidation of the living wage into the SGC pay and grading structures detailed in paragraph 3.14. Are we content to note? The 2.2 were asked to approve the recommended change to the pay and grading structure to achieve consolidation of the living wage as detailed in paragraphs 310 to 313. And at 2.3 to agree to implement the revised pay and grading structures detailed at paragraph 311 from 1st April 2020. Are we agreed? Thank you. Thank you, Stuart. Item 7 is the Council-wide Workforce Plan report by Head of People and Transformation. Members are asked to consider and approve the Council-wide Workforce Plan, which has been developed to help understand future workforce impacts and the requirements to deliver the ambitions of our Council Plan and Transformation Programme. The plan we are presented with has been developed in conjunction with the joint trade unions. The Best Value Assurance Report findings presented to Full Council on 18th December 2018 included a recommendation that a council-wide workforce plan reflecting transformation processes should be developed. The Council's Workforce Transition Board has analysed all workforce impacts and opportunities in order to update the Workforce Strategic Needs Assessment and identify the information required to complete the medium and longer-term forecasts of workforce numbers and skills included within this plan. James McDowell is here to speak to the report. James, is there anything you'd like to add? Okay, with that, I'll open to members' questions and comments. Archie.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. And unlike Councillor James, I don't think our workforce do believe they have a job for life any longer because of the austerity that's been mentioned already by Councillor Scobie. I think this is a good step in moving the workforce plan forward, and it gives people the opportunity to look at their potential of the future and get more skills, and potentially getting more skills could mean getting more pay as well. So I think it's a good piece of work done here, and I'm happy to go with the recommendations, Chair.
Thank you, Archie. Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, Chair, before we move to that, and I hope we can speedily move to it, I'm looking at page 60, Chair, in terms of the overview and the fact that we've got to recognise the demographic and age profile changes. And what my question would be, what concentration is there to have more carers, particularly in the West where we're suffering and our people in the West are, in terms of bed block and care at home and so forth. And I align that to page 69, where we look at health and social care partnership And the paragraph, the second last paragraph that refers to the introduction of health and social care partnership has impacted on our workforce, and there are new and exciting opportunities to shape the future, the shift to balancing care to closer integration with health. What I'm looking at is, you know, carers becoming a profession, just as nurses do, and that we promote that and we try to get more and more people into the caring aspect and industry, and to bring that forward. So looking at and recognising, as I say, the demographics, the age profile, how do we get to that point where we get more and more through the colleges into the caring sector? Is there a move to do that?
Thank you,
Absolutely. Through you, Chair. Yeah, you've hit the nail right in the head there, Councillor. Just with regards to the link between the two there, and what we need to do to make that a career that people want to move into. You know, it's a career pathway that people want to move into and fulfil their career and move up through. You know, I think early years childcare is probably a good example of that, where you can come in at a trainee level and through qualifications, through working in partnership with the colleges, we can train our staff and develop our staff and move them forward in that career. And we would do something similar with the social care aspect attached in this document.
I would hope, Chair, that we can recognise that and show that we are doing that, and that the figures would reflect. And I'll speak later in other figures that we've seen come into area committee. So I would hope that that is, you know, part of priority recognition, that we do look for that, and that carers become part of the whole profession, as James has alluded to.
No, I appreciate the point, Councillor Scobie. I think very well made. Councillor Nicholl?
I think Councillor Crothers has got a supplementary question to the last one, and I'm willing to let him in first.
In that case, by all means, Councillor Crothers, you first.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's an interesting subject matter that Councillor Scobie brings up, and James has already alluded to that. So I'll give you a wee scenario. I just wonder if there's a correlation between the wider partnership working. So obviously, adult social care, in particular, that's probably the side that Councillor Scobie is alluding to. So the Integrated Joint Board has a workforce plan as well. So it's that strategic objectives. So as part of this, the Integrated Joint Board's strategic plan, it says we will deliver care as close to home or in a homeless setting as we possibly can as it goes forward. So there is a point to this. I'm just wondering, so for instance, so we're trying to drive away from institutionalised care and back towards the care at home, so the type of people Councillor Scobie is alluding to. So I do think there's a correlation. So recently, in the last recent months, there was a pressure on a particular community hospital where the NHS engaged the wider workforce in Dumfries and Galloway, and it went through its HR process and employed a couple of people, and they came from that particular sector that Councillor Scobie is alluding to. So there was clearly a conflict at that point, because there was you can't, it's human nature. You can't blame people for saying, okay, I'd rather work for the NHS as a private provider because there's better terms, conditions, so on and so forth. But there was a clear conflict at that point between the objectives of the strategic plan, the wider partnership aspirations, and the actual workforce strategy plan as it was going forward. So I just wondered, what correlation is there between, has there been any work at all in regards to that? So we've got a workforce plan, should be fit for the next 5 years, a level of transformation, maybe we'll come on to that later on, but there's a lot of things going on that could really bend and shape and pull at this plan. That question may be asked later, but in direct, how much work's been done in partnership in regards to making sure that this is fit for purpose, looking at the impact assessment, haven't seen the finer detail, James, but I would like some kind of description. I'd like assurance as well that we are actually working in partnership with our wider partners, whether it's NHS, but beyond that as well.
Thank you, Councillor Crothers. Certainly for my part, I regard it as essential. It's a small region, and you refer to big players within it. I think that working in partnership on these matters is going to be absolutely crucial. However, James.
Absolutely, through yourself, Chair. You mentioned IGIB there, and of the IGIB there's a subgroup that looks at that integrated workforce plan that I'm a member of, that subgroup, along with another couple of colleagues from DGC. So that allows that ability to be in place, to share, to work in partnership. We've also introduced a memorandum of understanding between the organisations, so it's to get that full partnership in recruitment and such like is in there, and how we take that forward as an IGIB rather than two separate organisations. So that partnership approach is certainly at the front of what we're trying to do.
Mr. Carlos, you want to come back?
Thanks very much for the answer, James. I appreciate that. It's my understanding that is going as well. But the example I give would allude to, so there's a lot of partnership work maybe going on, but on the ground it could be different. So just I've had the reassurances, Jim, just to make that point, because it looks that obviously the NHS is pulling from the adult social care, that private provision, the workforce there. So only just to be aware of that, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carruthers. Councillor Nicholl.
Thanks, Chair. On page 55, it says that the reality of this will be a reduction in the current workforce. The forecast funding pressures mean that up to 1,000 posts could be removed. What effects is that going to have on us as a council? What effects is it going to have on how we deliver what little services are left? And can this be done under the no compulsory redundancy policy we have at the moment?
James?
That's obviously a forecast that's put in there linked to the financial challenge that's going to be in place over the next 3 years. And I think that challenge has to be a managed reduction over those 3 years and how we do that. And it's probably bringing in what we're talking about where there's essential areas, social care being one of those that we've touched on earlier, and how we train and develop our staff to move into these essential areas that are required as we go forward. I think it's that lateral movement of staff. These are the essential areas, these are non-essential, and we need to move our staff into that in a managed way, in a development way into these posts.
Councillor Nicholl.
I totally agree with what you're trying to portray there, James, but the blunt fact is that we've already lost maybe 1,000 or 1,200 posts in the council. We're looking at another 1,000. That's about 25% of our workforce, maybe more, will have gone. And it's an absolute impossibility to deliver the services that we have been delivering with 25% of our workforce not there. We're needing to get that message out, because the people are expecting still to get the public out there are expecting still to get the same services. It's a PR exercise which we're not getting right at the moment somehow.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholl. Councillor Hagman.
Thank you, Chair. It's a really simple question, really. On page 71, there's made reference to borderlands. Can I ask why there's no reference to the new South of Scotland Economic Agency?
Jane? Oh, no. Lauren, do you want to take that? Okay.
Councillor Hagman, we're waiting stage 2 information from the government, stage 2 of the bill on the new economic agency, to understand what impacts that might have on our own retention and recruitment, and any other impacts on our own staffing at the moment. We're awaiting that information from government, so we are conscious of it, but that might be something we'll look at and we'll bring back to members, and indeed the Head of Economy and Development alludes to that in his own business plan about the need for that clarity. But we do understand that will have an impact, but in terms of retraining, it's unlikely to be an issue of training and more an issue of understanding which resources sit with the agency and which resources stay with this council or otherwise as well. So it is understood, but at this stage we don't have clarity on that information.
Councillor Curtis, on that point?
It's not actually a different point, Chairman, at your discretion.
I shall bring you back in. Councillor McClelland.
Thank you, Chair. This is an observation, James. It's not a criticism, or it's not meant to be a criticism. In this report and the number of reports after it, we make no reference at all to the climate emergency declaration, and when we list priorities, we just don't see climate change at all as an integral part of any of these reports or the following reports. And I'm just wondering, because this is an active plan and a plan that can be adjusted, I'm just wondering when we could expect to see the climate change elements brought into the workforce plan and obviously the other plans in place. And the second point, it's on a similar theme. We know there'll be an update. It's an active plan and it's 310. We've started the transformation workshops, and workforce has already been included in there, and we know that there's a number of themes coming out from our own workforce, and it's how we get those incorporated into this plan. And just asking the question, can you ensure that will happen?
James?
Yeah, through you, Chair, absolutely. I think that's why it says there in the report about being live, being flexible to allow those developments to be added in as we go forward. So it has that live status, absolutely. So you have the reassurance that that will take place.
Leader?
Thanks, Chair. It's back to the recruitment issue, and just for a bit of reassurance, I don't know that all members of the Community Planning Partnership have maybe not had the chance to read their papers for tomorrow's meeting yet, but as a consequence of a discussion that Councillor Davidson and I have had with the Chair of the of the Health Board, I think we believe that there is a role for the Community Planning Partnership in trying to address the issues of the lack of the reduction of people on working age, and so there will be some discussion tomorrow about something called Project 155, which is about attempting to increase the working age population by 155,000, and because it's something that affects all of us, it's not just us or the NHS, the fire service, the police service, the private sector, everybody is being affected by the difficulties in recruiting people to particular types of positions. So we felt that this was something that really the Community Planning Partnership has to take forward.
Thank you, Leader. I was waiting and hoping that you might bring that up. Councillor Thompson?
Thanks, Chair. It's actually on page 61 of the report itself. And obviously we've heard about recruitment issues and I suppose the employment needs in the area to address the priorities that we have and the services that people are actually needing. We've got this uneasy tension where on the one hand we want to increase the number of high-paid professional posts, yet our greatest need is often the low-paid care sector and tourism sector, where a lot of our priorities lie as well. So that's something that, and it does allude later in that page, where we're predicting a decrease in employment in the sectors like manufacturing, agriculture, forestry, etc., which are predominantly, traditionally, lower paid than other professional ones. However, my actual question, that what it arose from, was where's the missing 12.6% of people? Because the table there gives an illustrative comparison against Dumfries and Galloway in Scotland, but that only represents 87.4% of the workforce for Dumfries and Galloway and 89% for Scotland. So I'm just wondering, what sectors have we not included, or should there just be another line there saying other?
Okay, James?
Absolutely, it's just a line that says other that are very small percentage. Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Crowther?
Thank you, Chair. Just it's a small point. It's very similar to Councillor McLellan's point he brought up. But just so when I was looking at this, I did think, because how flexible was it? It is a live document. It's been alluded to, but with a major amount of transformation. I just wanted the assurances, really, maybe been covered already by Councillor McLellan's question, but the assurances that with the degree of changes that are coming, whether it's climate change, whether it's a transformation, changes in service delivery, so on and so forth, even some services potentially losing them. With that threat as well, whether it's education, planning, so on and so forth, but maybe in our roads, is this fit for purpose? And so that it can, the assurance that it's fit for purpose and it can adapt to these type of changes.
So in terms of flexibility and adaptability, can we give that assurance?
Yeah, absolutely. Once the transformation is happening, that will be fed into this document as it goes forward. Absolutely, you have the reassurance of that.
Councillor Scobie?
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me back in. I'm looking at page 74 of the report, and item 6 on that, and addressing staff health, safety, well-being and supporting attendance at work. And I'm looking at it from a perspective of the effects this is going to have with the cuts in public services. And from the reports that I have seen made to the Joint Safety Committee, in terms of the increased number of abusive and violent behaviours that we're seeing in our schools. And what I'm seeing is, and it's more a note rather than a question for us all, to look at this when we all consider next year's budget, in terms of the effect this has on our staff, where we are seeing cuts and the effect that is having, and that for that report that we got at the Joint Safety Committee to be populated through the relevant committees, so that we are aware of some of the issues in terms of the massive increases in these abusive and violent behaviours. And I'm not suggesting that we're saying the Wains are bad Wains, it's the effect it has in the classrooms and other parts or the departments where we have this. So I think we need to be conscious if we're accepting that as addressing the staff health, safety and well-being when we look at the budgets in the next year and the effect cuts have on them.
Thank you, Councillor Scobie. James?
Wasn't it a question, Chair? It was more or less an observation at this point as we move to the budget, if we're serious about the health and well-being of our staff when we do look at these cuts, and for that report to be populated.
Archie, you want to come
Yeah,
in?
I mean, I agree with Willie quite a lot, being the health and wellbeing champion for the council, having that group of employees meeting that looks at the health and wellbeing right across, the council for the employees. I do think that, the only certain thing that's going to happen in the future is the uncertainty of what budgets are actually going to be. So we need to make sure that people are well looked after within our employ. And certainly that group has been very positive moving forward in the things that we're actually doing. And obviously Stuart's here as the sort of lead officer in that group, and we're taking that forward.
Thank you, Archie. We'll turn to the recommendations. Councillor Nicholl.
Yeah, it's just something that a colleague has brought up here. It would appear that we are losing about 36,000 working days per year through sickness. How does that compare with other areas? Have we got a particularly unhealthy workforce? Or is that just, it seems a phenomenal amount of days lost which are being paid at full rate. And that is a big drain on our economy. I just wondered if that was general across all authorities and looking at NHS, etc. as well, or are we particularly high?
James?
Yeah, through yourself, Chair. We're not particularly high. We're not the worst in Scotland. I think we're sitting about middle of the table at the moment. So we're not high.
Councillor Nicholl, you want to come back?
Yeah, it's just very disappointing and worrying. But I accept what James has just said. So, but I just want to highlight it that it is, to me, that seems high. It seems that we have got a problem.
Archie, if I can maybe put it into perspective, Graham, you're looking at 6,000 employees, some part-time, most part-time, and it's 4 or 5 days per person, but there are some people who are long-term sick and things like that, who unfortunately have medical conditions which add up to that. Now, it's probably, as James says, middle of the table in the Scottish local authorities. And I think what we're trying to do is try to reduce that as much as possible with the processes we've got in place with the health and well-being stuff that's actually going on as well. But, in the main, you'll see education, for instance, being probably the higher, and it comes back to what Councillor Scobie said earlier on. Sometimes they get injured through that type of thing. So it's definitely something we're looking at to try and reduce. But in the main, I think it's, it's average, for the council.
I think I appreciate what Archie's just said, but according to the chart here, SJC staff 11.44 days lost through sickness per year. That Archie said 6, and teaching staff 7.45.
What I said, Graham, was an average. If you look at the amount of employees we have, on average it would be 6. Yeah.
Okay, colleagues, we'll go to the recommendations. We certainly have considered the council-wide workforce plan. Are we content to approve? Thank you. Thank you, James. Item 8 is the Assessor and Electoral Registration Officer Service Business Plan 2019 to 2023, report by Assessor and Electoral Registration Officer. This report presents the new business plan for the Assessor and Electoral Registration Officer Service. Members will recall that in agreeing new structures, arrangements for business plans were also agreed, ensuring that plans would be presented for each service area rather than by the former directorates. For this committee, this means that we have presented to us today 3 plans for the Assessor and ERO, the Economy and Development Service, and finally People and Transformation, this and the subsequent 2 reports. We will, of course, take each of these in turn. I welcome the opportunity for a closer attention and focus on key services and the clearer picture that the new plans provide. It's also welcome that we can see in a much clearer way the work on the ground that Council staff are undertaking. Members will recognise across the plans the embedding of our agreed approach to performance management information and reporting, including clear trend information, targets and benchmarking where that is available. Clearly there are some points where that is not yet. This will provide for much clearer reporting for scrutiny and future consideration by this committee. The development of business plans also required that services bring together essential financial and workforce planning information, and I welcome the inclusion of these important aspects of service activity within the plans we're considering today. Jim Doig's here to assist with any questions members may have on the report and the plan. Jim, is there anything you'd like to add?
No thanks, Chair.
Okay, members will go straight to comments and questions. And on the assumption that there are no comments and questions, we'll go straight to the recommendations. We're asked to agree the Assessor and Electoral Registration Officer Service Business Plan for 2019-20 to 22-23 as Appendix 1. Are members content to agree? Thank you very much. Thank you, Jim. Item 9 is the Economy and Development Service Business Plan. So without the long preamble this time, we will go straight on to that. Steve Rogers is here to answer any questions on the report and the plan. Members, any questions or comments? Councillor Carruthers.
It's no question, Chair, but if you indulge, it's just a comment in regards to, I'll keep speaking about this, I suppose, every opportunity I get in regards to the level of transformation and where economy now sits with the #1 priority of the Council. I'll just leave that out there. I think we're going to have to start looking and reprioritising. Very, very important, obviously, Dumfries and Galloway, taking it very, very seriously. But going back to the comments I made earlier in regards to, I think it will be a completely different Council 3 years from now. The services that we deliver and our priorities will have to change over that term. So just it's kind of ad hoc and in the back of this, it's here as a subject matter, but as further plan, absolutely fine. But going back to comments previously as well, regards to workforce, we do need the reassurances that we can change and adapt, and we know we do have those processes in place anyways.
Thank you, Councillor Carruthers. Steve. Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, Chair, it's a point, I'm looking at page 126, support our small and medium-sized businesses to be established and grow. And I think from the most recent report we got, which only a couple of weeks ago at the Wigton Area Committee, it was reported that there was some 60 people had come forward, small businesses development or potential development had come forward, but the numbers of that proceeded through was very, very low. I think it was then into single figures, which was well below the target figure. And similarly on page 128, in terms of what we're saying there, increased equality and opportunities through our employability and skill service provide the support to improve the prospect for vulnerable individuals to enter the job market. And I think this was more, again, there was a low figure in terms of the target figure for our young people at school coming forward for work experience in the West. And again, that was reported. And the suggestion was a lot of this had to do because of the closure of the gateway offices and that we had moved in partnership. I would hope that there could be a focus on this and that we do try and develop alongside people who are wanting to come into small business development or whatever to raise the economy, and that we give them as much support as we can to bring their ideas to fruition. And similar with our young kids at school, who many will not all go to universities or further education, that we give them the maximum opportunities in going through their school curriculum onto work experience. That we look at those 2 points, and I hope Steve would take that on board.
Thank you for that, Councillor Scobie. Steve.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just to assure members that those areas will continue to be a priority. And I think that's reflected in the business plan in terms of some of the measures and some of the projects that we'll be undertaking Certainly the activities of our Business Gateway service and our employability and skills team will continue to contribute to those outcomes.
And we'll pick up, I think, on the issues that Councillor Scobie raised in the subsequent reporting and monitoring that comes back to this committee. That'd be good. Thank you very much. Councillor Marshall.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just a slight amendment, just noticed on page 126, under the heading Invest in our Key Infrastructure. I think after the decision we took last year after the closure of Pinneys and the funding that we got from the South Scotland Enterprise Partnership, is that it's got down there Annan, but I think we agreed that, you know, there's an action plan being developed not only for Annan but the wider DG12 area. So I think that should be amended to actually reflect that.
Thank you for that, Councillor Marshall. That is correct, isn't it?
Yeah, certainly we'll pick that up. I think we do refer to the Annan and DG12 action plan elsewhere, but we'll certainly pick that up.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Steve. Councillor James.
Thank you. On page 29, we're mentioning the Borderlands growth deal and the SOSE as a challenges and opportunities. Borderlands, I think we somewhat missed that boat a bit, and that was probably our fault for not engaging enough with it. And also, maybe it's political, but there wasn't enough thought about how to get pan-regional projects that would have leveraged much more than was being put in. But that ship has somewhat sailed, and it is not actually that big a ship when you actually think it's running for or sailing for 10 or 15 years. But SOSEP is just really cranking up, and it could also not be optimized in a way that it might spread its jam very thinly and create a wide diversity of projects that don't really do much. Alternatively, we could access that big resource pool that we don't usually use, which is the sort of intellect and ability of the councillors, and there are a lot of councillors, and they could contribute quite a lot to think about what would be the best game-changing project for their particular area. And I would encourage them to do so. I would take this opportunity to thank Steve, and under him Mark Geddes, for assisting with the Castle Douglas Regional Food Chain project, which I believe, if it gets support, could do amazing things for my particular area. But get on board, get our share, and try to get those projects, the big key ones that will make the difference to your areas.
Thank you, Councillor James. The leader may want to say something about Borderlands, but I think we shall wait and see what comes to full council, but it may become apparent that we have not missed the boat by anywhere near as much as Councillor James believes that we have. Steve, is there anything you want to add?
Not particularly, Chair. As you alluded to there will be a fuller report coming to full council on Borderlands, just to provide an update and map out the way forward in terms of how we're going to respond to those opportunities. With regard to the new agency, again, there will be considerable opportunities for us to try to influence the emerging priorities of the new agencies, and I think that's where we need to be putting effort in over the coming months, so that once the agency is established, that we are able to ensure that we get our share of investment in the future coming through from the agency. It's clear that both within the agency and within Borderlands, whilst there might be a number of place-specific initiatives, there are also likely to be a number of region-wide programmes and project pots. So I think part of our role is to ensure that all parts of the region do benefit from these investments.
Thank you, Steve. Councillor McComb.
Thanks, Chair. Page 161. We have a list there of improvement projects. The first one on the list is reduce countryside and access surveys. Now, I would accept that that was indeed a cost saving, I would doubt very much, however, if it was an improvement project, certainly based upon the feedback I've been receiving from constituents.
Grateful for you highlighting that. I think we will look at terminology, certainly. Councillor Hagman?
Thank you, Chair. And yes, I too would be grateful if we could look at the rewording of that particular one. It was just really to draw officers' attention to a project that I was at yesterday in terms of working with the Galloway and Southern Ayrshire Biosphere and Edinburgh University. They're looking at ways of taking forward how we deliver woodland and strategic woodland projects, which I note on page 146. So it was just really a sort of pointer to engage with the Foreland project, of which, as I say, I was involved with a workshop yesterday at New Galloway with. So, as I say, it was just more a pointer for officers, because obviously we're sitting at 15% and we do have the strategic or a potential strategic woodland Sanker area, and in terms of how we move that forward under the increasing pressures of our priorities.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hagman. Perhaps want to take up following.
Yes, thank you, Chair. We'll certainly follow that up with Councillor Hagman.
Thank you very much. We'll move to the recommendations. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. So it was just actually a point on page 132 where it's looking at assets. Obviously, we have a sort of notional target each year in terms of capital receipts for asset sales. Some years it's good, some years it's bad. Just depends on how projects go. And obviously, we've now got the other option of like community asset transfers, which, while not necessarily given the financial receipt, will give a social return on investment type of receipt, if you like, which is fine. However, there's we have £8 million worth, just I think it's £7.97 million worth of asset declared surplus as of today. So I'm just thinking, even though we have a target of, I think, 500,000 or 600,000 per year, is there any reason why we need to delay on realising the value of £8 million to this council, given that they're all currently surplus? Obviously, if you take that over time, numbers of years, that's a sort of like a drip feed of a saving, but really the assets are of value now. And we do have a process. I understood we agreed one where, like, if there was no interest in it, or it couldn't be sold or marketed in the normal ways, then it would go to auction. I don't know how many properties have gone to auction, but it's not many. But if there's £8 million worth sitting there, can we sort of get that moved on a bit?
Steve?
Chair, yes. I mean, we're certainly looking at a programme of asset disposals, and I suppose the key thing there is the value, is the book value. That will not be realised until they're released to the market and we actually get a purchaser. So the properties that we are able to bring to market, I think part of my rationale as being newly responsible for this area of activity is to make sure that we maximise the value of those assets by removing as much risk as possible from potential purchasers before we bring them to market, whether that means developing or putting in place development briefs or master plans, or doing some of that contextual and background work before we release them to the market. I think that's a way in which we can increase and maximise our return. We've also got to take into account market conditions locally, which are still very slow. And that's why I think we have to take a measured approach in terms of how we introduce our properties onto the market.
Thank you, Steve. Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you. I just mentioned the community asset transfer as well as part of the asset transfer, which plays a big part in that. And when it's released and what parts have been released in, that makes a big difference in what you can actually achieve out of it. Out of that £8 million, it all depends what happens with the community asset transfer part. But just on the, maybe clarify for me, Steve, about page 184, which is you've got amount of business investment. This is on the performance indications. And you've got the second one down, PIC 4S8, which is amount of business investment. I can understand why a lot of the other ones have been removed, and etc. Maybe give us a wee more detail about what that actually means, because amount of business investment removed, and that's removed, lack of clarity cannot be reliably measured or reported on. So the amount of, maybe give us an idea what that actually means in reality. The other one is at the bottom of that page. Actually, it's about we just talked about the environment earlier on, and the very bottom one in that page, the percentage of improvement of staff attitudes to carbon management in the workplace, and that's been removed as well. Is there another kind of indicator which, is in something else that measures that?
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Nicholson. Steve?
Yes, thank you, Chair. With regard to the first one, it's probably worth saying that given that this is a new business plan for a new service, we have taken the opportunity to thoroughly review all of the performance information that we inherited from the previous departmental business plans, and this was one amount of business investment which was proving extremely difficult, if not impossible, to actually measure, because it lacks clarity in terms of what was meant by business investment and what actually are we measuring that is the council's performance. So I think that's better reflected in some of the other measures around business startups and business growth. With regard to carbon management in the workplace, we do have other indicators within the business plan which look at our performance in terms of carbon reduction, and I think the focus going forward in terms of the climate emergency declaration and the discussions earlier on is likely to shift much more towards making sure that we are accurately recording and measuring our ongoing carbon footprint and the impact that our action plan is having on reducing that carbon footprint.
Okay, Councillor Nicholson, you want to come back?
Thanks very much. I do know you've got other carbon reduction targets in there, and you're trying to, bring it to a measurable point. But it just seems to me counter to what we're trying to look at to make every individual within the council aware and attitudes towards that type of environmental impact has. And taking that away, but if I do understand there are other carbon measures, but
I guess it's also quite likely that will be superseded by the work that arises out of the working group and then future decisions of this committee and of full council. Although I do take your point. Councillor Nicholl?
Thanks, Chair. Page 143, key performance indicators. Young people not in education, training or employment supported into employment, training and education. 2017-18, we had a target of 300 and we had a value of 306. 18-19, we reduced the target from 300 to 150 and we only managed 74. And 2019-20, we reduced the target yet again to 100, and at the moment we've got 19. Is there a reason for this? I mean, why are we keep reducing the target and still failing it? Firstly, and secondly, is it due to a lack of willing participants, or is it a lack of resources?
Steve?
Chair, it's really a reflection of two things. First of all, changes to the actual programmes, the employability programmes that we're delivering. But more importantly, secondly, the programmes are now much more focused on those young people that are furthest away from the labour market and from a positive outcome. So the numbers that we're able to deal with has diminished and reduced because each individual is requiring a much higher level of input. So it's rather than getting larger quantities assisted, we're having to spend more and more time providing quality advice and input to those that need it most. So it's a prioritisation effect.
Councillor Nicholl, you want to come back?
Yeah, so does that mean that the people in the middle ground are just neglected completely? The people who are, you're saying it's the people furthest away from the labour market that are being encouraged or trained, but we must be missing out somebody in the middle.
Steve?
It's a reflection of the prioritisation within the different employability and skills programmes that we're currently delivering. They are subject to review at the moment, and we're proposing to bring a paper to the November meeting, Chair, setting out our future approach to the delivery of employability and skills going forward.
I'm looking forward to it already.
As are we all. Councillor Thompson, if it wasn't the same point. I've not forgotten about you, Councillor James.
Thank you. Is that actually linked to that in terms of reaching those in most need, if you like, that are furthest from the market, to give them that opportunity? But obviously one of the things we agreed, I think, at the last council was to do with looking at ways of providing a mechanism for supporting community transport in the region, which I understand is something that may come up at the community planning partnership in due course, with the chief executive being charged by this council to find a way. But are there opportunities there that are linked to the sort of the transport challenges for those maybe who, through a number of sort of indices maybe in the prioritisation, can't actually get to opportunities, as well as other difficulties that they might be facing?
Steve?
Certainly the existence of transport, or the non-existence of transport as a barrier to employment, is something that is very much on the agenda as far as the new agency is concerned. And I think some of the research that SOSEP has carried out has indicated amongst employers that is a key concern. So that's certainly an area that will be taken forward through the new agency and engagement with ourselves and Swestrans.
Councillor James.
Thank you once again. The book value that Steve referred to, that's not the same value that gives us the £1 billion worth of assets, which is, according to my research, predicated on the reconstruction value, which is something completely different. And I would just like to clarify that. But on value, when you market a property, our Common Good Committee took the view that we would, we can't decide anything, we recommended that we would spend the extra money on getting our property, which we're selling, onto Zoopla and Rightmove, which I think is a good idea, because the alternative was to put it on our website, which has a certain amount of traffic, and an obscure one that doesn't have much traffic. So it wouldn't, there was then less risk it would slip under the radar and it would obtain the best price. I don't know if that's something that should be considered as best practice. My feeling would be that it should be. And the paths, reduce countryside access and assess access service. I've in the past tried to take to the Communities Committee the idea that community participation, which was an initiative which I think has failed completely, should be changed somewhat. At the moment, the idea is that groups would take up an activity and do it on a voluntary basis without support from us. But I think as we transform, there would be a lot of mileage in it if we would part finance that. So if something was costing us, well, in this case, 200,000, and locally, one element of that might be 10,000, and locally the local community group was willing to do it for half of what it was costing us, then it would presumably be in everybody's benefit, and rather than taking the binary decision to scrap the thing altogether, where we would just throw it out there to the communities, or let them bid when they see something that they think they can do. So I think it would be a really good scheme, this community participation, and I don't know if it only relates to the Communities Committee, where I failed to make progress there. I tried from the directors said I should try to do my party, I tried that way, but I'd just like to raise it as a possibility to this committee.
Thank you, Councillor James. Steve, you want to pick up on some of that? Not looking massively keen. To the best of my knowledge, the approach that you outline is not one that we're fundamentally opposed to. Indeed, I'm certain that it's happening in some places already. However, perhaps we will bring that back. I'm going to move to the recommendations, members. Oh, Archie, my apologies.
I think Steve said earlier there's going to be a full report coming to the next committee about how we take this forward, and perhaps that's an area where you could have a think about what you can come forward with, any sort of suggestions and things like that, David. So at the next committee there's an opportunity there, I think.
Members, we'll move to the recommendations. At 2.1, we're asked to agree the Economy and Development Business Plan for 1920 to 22-23. That's Appendix 1. And at 2.2, we're asked to note the amendments within the plan to projects and performance indicators which are transferred to the Economy and Development Service. That's as set out in Appendix 5. Are we content with those? Thank you. Thank you, Steve. Item 10 is the People and Transformation Service Business Plan 2019 to 23. Report by Head of People and Transformation. James McDowell, Stuart Clanahan and Heather Carnahan are here to answer any questions on the report. I'll give you a chance to get seated. I didn't want to do the same preamble 3 times, you see. Is there anything that you'd like to add to the report? Okay, I shall move it straight on to members' questions and comments. Archie.
Yeah, I think a lot of this has come in the previous 2 reports as well, and moving forward, we need to take our people forward. This is a plan to actually take our people forward with it. I think it's another good plan that can help us take there. It's not going to be the be all and end all of everything, and it's going to change as we move through the different ages of our budget process in the next 2 or 3 years. But I think it's a good start to move this forward, 2019 to 2023. And we've also got the South of Scotland Enterprise Agency and Borderlands to come along, and they'll obviously need support there as well. So I think it's a good report. If no other member is, well, I'm just go with the recommendations.
Okay, Councillor Hagman.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to draw attention to page 202, where we're looking at customer and digital, and that we will lead and enable digital transformation across the benefits of service delivery. And certainly from a member's point of view, I just wanted to thank the officers for the equipment that we have that enables us to Skype into meetings, etc. Although we are still lacking a permanent option here. And I'm just looking for clarity that we will get that. I will bring this up continuously because I know it's something that we're working towards, and just to keep it in mind, because we're saving hundreds of miles by not having to come for short seminars. And just also to reiterate the point that I previously made, that when we are arranging seminars, that it is an option to be able to Skype or Zoom or join the seminars remotely, because we're a vast area and that's not happening, and I'm having to every seminar that I'm not able to attend in person, having to make that request to each individual organiser, and that continuity is not happening. So just to really put that request in. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hagman. Lorna, I'll bring you in on that point.
Members will be aware of a previous decision about looking at this chamber in particular and work to look at remote committees or joining committees remotely. And that work's ongoing, and the Democratic Services team are looking at that just now, and I think they'll be bringing back some reports on that. And also in relation to the seminars and recording of them, I think one of the things we did agree and is outstanding is to make sure seminars are recorded, either video or an audio recording of them, so members can access them even if they can't attend. And obviously we're looking at Skype, and that's depending on, I suppose, the type of seminar, whether it's in our locale. And we'll make sure that's consistent, and I'll speak again to the corporate development unit around that.
Thank you, Laura. Councillor Nicholson.
Just on that point, and I obviously couldn't make any seminar of that, but seminars have always been an open and frank area so you can discuss things, and that's the only issue, if you want, that a lot of things might not get discussed, or openness might not be if it's recorded and public consumption.
I do take the point. Lorna?
Councillor Nicholson makes a very good point, and I think probably part of the recording is the presentation by officers part rather than the debate by members, so we need to work our way through that depending on the subject matter and indeed members' appetite for those recordings. So that's one of the reasons why it's been not actioned fully at this stage.
Thank you, Laura. Councillor James?
It looked to some outside observers that our restructuring of the directorates took place because one of the directors retired. And that looked to some people that a rather inefficient way of doing things, albeit perhaps convenient. But it may have just been a coincidence that somebody retired right at the time that we thought we would restructure. But I would like to ask about, what do we think the overall effect is of our no compulsory redundancy policy in how we structure our business? And have we ever looked at examples of other organisations that have had to downsize massively in the environment of a no compulsory redundancy policy? And you know, could they handle it efficiently? Because it seems to me that, you know, if you put that there as a fixed item, you've got to work everything around it, which cannot be beneficial to the interest of the service users out there and outside this room. Thank you.
I think there is a portion of that officers will not be able to answer. The decision on no compulsory redundancy is a political one. It's made by members in this chamber. On the point on best practice, I would assume that you look at best practice across the board.
Chair, absolutely. You know, we are well connected through our various groups nationally in terms of practice, given that that's a workforce issue. So very much cited on it, and the challenges that we face with a no compulsory redundancy policy is faced by other councils, certainly across Scotland, if not wider than that, and we're in constant communication and looking for best ways in which we can manage a reduction in our workforce, respecting the political no compulsory redundancy commitment.
Just to clarify, we've done no evaluation of the consequence of following that policy, because we as members will have to judge whether that's a good policy to have at the next budget, and how will we judge it if we can't evaluate its impact on the efficiency with which we do our business?
I think, with all due respect to officers, that is a matter for members. We'll come to a view in it based on all the information that we're supplied both here at the Finance Performance Transformation Committee and at full council. I do value the member's consistency and his tenacity, but we are moving on. Councillor Scobie?
Yeah, Chair, I heard what Lorna said in terms of members' engagement, people who can or don't want to come or to the centre. But I think Andy Ferguson summed it up in one of the community committees, in that there are still some who don't participate in some of these Skypes and whatever else there is, that there still has got to be accommodation for people who still want to see the white of people's eyes and come to committee. So I hope that there's two sides to that one, and how we develop it.
Certainly would be my understanding that we would have to facilitate members' participation by whichever means they felt was most beneficial to them. There are members who would give their eye teeth not to travel all the distance from Stranraer and back numerous times a week, and there are other members who consider it essential to how they participate in the council.
On that point, has any work been done around coalescing the meetings on similar days? I mean, I've noticed that the parties tend to choose to meet on a Monday, which seems to me bizarre, given that there are hardly any other meetings that they could attend that day. But you know, if we had the stamina, we could do two meetings on the same day, and that might be more efficient. Rather than, I'm a bit sceptical as to whether Skype's going to really give the members who Skype themselves in the same access as we've got being here in the chamber.
Archie, please carry on.
Yeah, I would have a concern there. I mean, there were times when we did have two meetings in a day, and the problem is that if you give members enough time to scrutinise and you know, participate in any meeting, sometimes that first meeting will run into the time of the second meeting. So I think what we're trying to do is get a good programme of council committee meetings going over the next year or so. But I think if you try to get two in a day, you may be pushing it in some cases where there's a lot on the agenda, and the participation for members could be reduced because of that timing issue.
Yeah. Okay, members, we'll move to the recommendations. Councillor Thompson.
Thanks. I'm counting the number of times you missed me there, Chair. So it was actually on page 227, CSO5, and this is just the risk register, I think. But obviously the current risk is sort of somewhat in the red, and this is about retaining the right skills and experience to meet the needs and demands. And obviously we're in a sort of, I suppose, a long-term process of transformation as we move from what we did before to what we need to do to address the future for the citizens of the region and the staff. So I think there's something in here about the staff experience of how this goes, and I know it's alluded to in some of the mitigations in terms of like, well, do we have a consistent approach to ERVS? Or are people able to move through the deployment process or get the training prior to the post becoming available, or do they have to get the training after they're in? You know, so I think the experience of that might not seem consistent across the piece, depending on when things happen or when people choose to engage with training or retirement or whatever it might be. So I'm just sort of wondering, that does seem like to be the biggest risk in the paper. And it's really to get an assurance that we're getting that focus in terms of investment and training, that we're listening to the staff who are potentially going to be most affected by transformations, etc. Because really, it's essential, if we're going to be efficient, that we've got the right people in the right place. So, and if they aren't now, and we don't, and we sort of have a vision of where they might need to be, then we need to be ready that they're capable. So, is there any assurance I can get on that?
Okay, James. Through you, Chair, yeah. Just to give elected members that reassurance that obviously the workforce plan was here earlier as part of that, but also through DG Transform and the work we do there, it is about making sure that support training is there prior to any movement, and we'll continue to do that as we go forward. So it's to give you that reassurance.
Yep, by all means.
And for those who, I mean, obviously there are people who've maybe been displaced because of previous changes, who are maybe I don't know what the nomenclature is, but in a matching pool or a redeployment pool, whatever it might be. But and is that afforded to? I presume the same thing as the courtesy is extended to all members of staff to get the most out of our assets.
James,
through yourself, Chair. Yeah. Speaking from experience, someone who was in redeployment pool, I was afforded that very thing of being developed and being able to up my skill base to move into a new job and a new opportunity within the council. So it's afforded to everyone. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm glad we've got a living example of the success of that. So that's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Crothers.
Thank you. Just a very small point. Page 211, which carries on, the very bottom carries on to page 212. It's about infrastructure investment. It talks about our broadband and our speed take up there. But what it shows is 2017-18, we were below target there, 18-19 below target. But in 1920, for the information that's gathered there, you can see it looks like it should have been completed on 31st of December 18, and that's at 89% with a target of 89.8%, which you think we've exceeded the target. It still shows it in red status, but it's more about the meaningfulness of that actual indicator. And is it relevant now within the business plan as we're going forward? It seems dated and out of date. I don't know what real influence we have other than lobbying in regards to that particular indicator.
Okay, who's taking that?
Yeah, we'll take that on board with regards to the dates and having something within the package moving forward within the business plan.
Councillor Crothers?
Accept that as an answer. I don't want to. We'll look at this with review and so on and so forth. It might be something before it comes back to the next one. Is that relevant or no? Does the committee need to make that decision, or we'll leave that to our officers?
Okay, Lauren, I'll bring you on that point.
Any amendments to the business plan will come back to this committee for approval. Members may recall, I think in the June full council there was a BT presentation and a private item, so we're awaiting further packages both from Scottish Government and them about the next stages around some of this, so we'll update it and bring it back to members.
because it was incredibly late in the day after a very long full council meeting, and I only now recall it. Councillor Nicholl.
Thanks, Chair. It's just a small point, but in page 234, 235 and 236, the graphs seem to be written in a foreign language to me. Could somebody explain to me what went wrong here?
Ah, yes, I see what you mean.
Or did something go wrong, or is it just a new policy to confuse everybody? Worse than we are.
Through you, Chair, yes, a development, absolutely. It's been a printing error by the looks of it. I printed off copies this morning straight from Connect, and they're perfect. So electronically, it's fine. Something's happened with the paper copies by the looks of it.
I hope somebody gets their backside kicked in.
Well, I'm sure it will be addressed constructively. We'll move on to the recommendations. Members were asked to agree the People and Transformation Service Business Plan for 2019-20 to 22-23 as included as at Appendix 1. Are we content to agree that? Take it that we are. Thank you. Thank you all very much. Item 11 is the Economy and Resources Revenue Budget Monitoring Report 1920 for the period ended 30th June 2019. Report by Head of Finance and Procurement. This report gives members an overview of the financial performance of services within Economy and Resources for the period to June 2019. I'm pleased to note that the projected position for the service is that with continued support of staff and with clear direction from senior officers, a balanced budget is forecast overall. Gillian Ross and Thomas Alder are here to answer any questions arising from the report. Have you anything to add? Okay, we'll move straight to comments and questions. Members? Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. It's just when I'm looking at Appendix 1, we have a nice wee columns of figures here. We've managed to establish that we're going to be 146,000 potentially overspent in economy and development, but it says here all the figures are to follow. Some of these relating back to the end of the last financial year, not just this quarter alone. So how did we arrive at the 146,000 when we don't have any figures?
Gillian, can you assist?
Thanks. It's just, we're still in the process at the moment of doing the disaggregation of the council budgets. So while we've got the overall elements that make up the economy and development section, how that is then split between the individual aspects has still to be confirmed and taken forward with the head of service. So we're working through that just now. So we've got all the data to be able to do the forecasts. We just can't split it out between the individual aspects within that section. So we have got the clarity as to everything that's contained within economy and development. Just how it's then split between the individual functions is still to be confirmed.
When do you think you'll be able to provide that information? Because I'm aware that you've had difficulties achieving that.
Gillian.
It will certainly be provided for the Q2 monitoring. We've been undertaking some meetings over the last week, and I think we're nearly at a position where we've got that kind of finalised. So for the next round of monitoring, it will be reported.
November committee? Okay. Councillor Crothers?
Just a small point in regards to paragraph 3.5. So we are coming in with a balance figure, a zero. So, but when I read that, it's still to be identified, measures to be identified of 199k. I just thought that felt like just a balancing figure. Just stick it in to send out the right message to the committee. Is there any detail behind that we can be reassured of?
Gillian?
That's our normal monitoring approach that we've been adopting for the last few years. We're very early in the financial year, so we've only Q1. What we like to do is highlight the potential pressures that will be incurred by the service, but there is a lot of work being undertaken by each head of service to identify measures to bring that back into a balanced position. We're quite confident with the work that we've been undertaking with each of them just now that there will be opportunities to bring that back into a balanced budget position, and we'll continue to report that through the remainder of the financial year. And as we get further on, we'll obviously get more clarity as to what those measures are and what impact that will have. But at the moment, it's very early in the financial year.
Okay. Councillor Thompson?
Thanks, Chair. It's actually a point I'd raised in the Finance Procurement Transformation Committee, but on Appendix 2, beg your pardon, page 247, if there could be an extra column. Sometimes there is a headline figure that says this is how much we've saved so far, but in terms of each line value, if there could be a sort of saying, right, after Q1 we saved 20k out of whatever the target is, and that would just be much easier to read. Thank you.
So I think as we discussed it, the Finance, Procurement and Transformation, we will look at doing that for the committees, and the appendices for each of the service committees follow on from the corporate-wide one. So if we take that approach, it'll be the same information that will come to each service committee.
Okay, thank you, Gillian. We'll go to the recommendations, members. Are we content to note 2.1 through to 2.4? Thank you. I am advised that there is at least a possibility of lunch today, but I intend to take this next item because we're not sure whether it has arrived yet. So we'll continue to make progress, I think. Item 12 is the Town Centre Living Fund report by Head of Economy and Development. A £1 million Town Centre Living Fund has been put in place by this council with the objective of supporting the regeneration of empty properties and brownfield sites through the delivery of housing, recognising the additional costs often associated with the development of these locations. It also aims to improve the sustainability of our town centres and provide attractive places to live by ensuring more people are able to reside close to the services and amenities town centres offer. The approach being taken in our region to support town centre living has been highlighted as good practice at a national level. Members of the Council's Communities Committee previously agreed to adopt the Council's Local Development Plan definition of town centre boundaries to provide guidance regarding eligibility. However, it was also noted that proposals from out with these areas could still provide a significant contribution to town centre regeneration. Should members agree the recommendations set out in this report, the financial support will help this region benefit from in excess of £14 million of investment to help sustain town centre economies, provide high quality homes and support the local construction industry. The purpose of the report is to seek members' agreement of the new applications to the 1920 Town Centre Living Fund. It is also seeking the allocation of additional council tax on second homes income to support the applications being presented to members. Jamie Little is here to answer any questions arising from the report. Jamie, is there anything you'd like to add?
Thanks, Chair. Nothing further to add at this stage.
Thank you, Jamie. We'll go to members' questions and comments. Councillor James.
Thank you. As previously stated in the declarations, I got as far as making a sort of expression of interest, I think, to the Town Centre Living Fund at one point, and possibly that in common with, I don't know, what should we say, the not usual suspects. A lot of us sort of fell by the wayside at that point. And here, so once again, we have the usual, more or less the usual suspects here taking part in this, which is it's potentially a very good fund, very good idea. And I think we have progressed somewhat, and I've pushed a lot to make this, to open this up to people, and we did actually advertise. I think available was up to £20,000, up to 50% of to be matched by 50% by the entity taking part, and that created a lot of interest. Looking at the list here, it hasn't stimulated a lot of private or small groups to come forward with their ideas. And I think one of the drawbacks is that when you actually do the calculation, if you don't have the £75,000 or so that is available to a housing association, then it's difficult to make the equation work for an older type of a building to go into affordable rent. And I think one point that was also raised was it's not always very easy for the council to actually police that restriction as time goes forward either. So I've had anecdotal evidence from private and community groups that this is not working for them. I think we've got real evidence here. It's probably not working for a range. I'm not sure if there are many other smaller projects or coming from smaller groups or individuals in the pipeline. And so I think we're still not quite leveraging that effort and investment that we could from a wide range, slightly smaller scale base, and that would just do more for the town areas and bring us more of a vibrancy to this potentially good policy if we could do that. I don't know whether the officer would like to just comment a bit on what I've been on about there.
Jamie, happy to invite you to respond to that. Clearly, this is one aspect of the overall fund, which I think is probably important to bear in mind. But please carry on.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Obviously, in the promotion of the Town Centre Living Fund, which has been extensive, we have been able to identify quite a number of key projects. Each year of the Town Centre Living Fund, there's also been a period of policy refinement to make sure we could maximise the delivery of the funding awards and support town centre living. Within this report, we do identify that there has been 40 grants given to private owner-occupiers through below tolerable standard grants. We're also seeking through a private developer to try and bring back into use a town centre property that will deliver 6 affordable units if members agree the recommendations. In addition to that, we are working with a number of other empty property owners, and we do hope to bring one certain project back to committee in November should we receive a formal application from them. We have worked to promote the town centre sites element of the Town Centre Living Fund also, and all the applications that have been received to date are being presented as part of this report.
Thank you, Jamie. Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, thank you. I think the one thing that I'm really noticing, and I'm happy to go with the committee in this, but 2.2, 2.4, 2.5, 2.6, all are going to deliver housing. 2.3, I would welcome getting a bit more sort of information about, I know this obviously is detailed in the report to some extent, but just maybe getting an update about the initial discussions, for example, that have maybe happened with South of Scotland Economic Partnership, etc. But it might deliver something, it might not deliver something. It's not necessarily currently backed by the Scottish Government, as with some of the other projects in terms of delivering housing. 77,000 to do a feasibility study. It could really transform something, but it's a bit of a punt, it seems like, at the moment. So I was just sort of wondering if there's a wee bit more information you could give on that.
Jamie?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, so the members referring to the Albert Hall in Annan, this property is something, is one that's been on the at-risk register since 1994. There's reports of its dilapidation since that time, and obviously during that time no solution has been found to bring this property back into use. It has been identified as key to the delivery of the work that the local solutions team are doing in DG12 as well. What the proposal is presenting is an extensive community engagement process as part of the feasibility. This isn't simply about a technical feasibility. There'll be a period of community engagement, engaging with local residents, community groups, other stakeholders, obviously including the council, to try and find the most suitable end use for this property. The proposal that's also been presented will develop a business plan. It will look for costing solutions as well and financial packages that can be pulled together to try and take this forward. The Cunningham Housing Association, who are the applicants in this this fund, are vastly experienced in the delivery of regeneration projects from predominantly in their base in Ayrshire, but they are now looking to work with local community groups to try and find a use for the Albert Hall going forward.
Thank you, Jamie. Councillor Marshall.
Yeah, really, I think the officer has actually alluded to the project and give a little bit more detail, but certainly it is not only on the current action plan, but it has been on the Annan Master Plan as well. And it's looking at all possibilities for this derelict building, which has caused a lot of negative kind of comment within Annan, especially as we have a derelict buildings strategy. And we're not ruling out the potential that there could be some, because in the past there was potentially some housing to go in that building directly, but Cunningham are also putting in about 30 houses just across the road from that.
So this is about actually regenerating the town centre by actually putting something in place, which I think until we've had the feasibility study, we can't rule out that there won't be any kind of maybe housing included within the project.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Councillor James, you wanted to come back in? Okay. Councillor Scobie?
Yeah, Chair, and I welcome the reference to the former Garrick Hospital site and would applaud Lawburn Housing Association in that and what they're doing at the Garrick site. But there's a part here, it will go some way, but it will not meet all the needs of the people, particularly the ones with dementia. And we've still got to focus on that, and both through the Council and the IGB in terms of the capital programme and how we move that forward in terms of addressing the needs of the people west of the region. But this is a move forward and to be welcomed. I hope we will agree with that and as I say, applaud Lawburn on it. My other question would be in terms of the flexibility. I know we talk about town centre, but sometimes we can be plagued by buildings out with town centre that have an effect on the economy. And in particular, Stranraer could make reference to one particular building, and sometimes it's precluded because it doesn't come within town centre. How much flexibility have we got to maybe that offers of grants could be available to some developers or property owners to improve that building? And if there's no flexibility, what efforts we could make to try and expand, what's regarded as town centre?
Thank you, Councillor Scobie. I think actually this report is demonstrating a degree of flexibility out with the LDP definition, but Jamie, please clarify.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, obviously the criteria was agreed by the Communities Committee, and we did try and allow for that flexibility that you've mentioned there, Chair, that we do try and identify properties that can still promote the regeneration of our town centres. The eligibility is agreed by members. We make recommendations. Each year we will come back with policy refinements should members agree to establish the £1 million Town Centre Living Fund. So the flexibility is being presented to members here for agreement. As noted, these properties do not fit necessarily within the local development plan town centres, but they will support the council's objectives for regeneration and also sustainability of our town centres.
Thank you, Jamie. Vice Chair?
Yeah, thanks very much here. It's good to see all of these things coming forward. And obviously, there's people who have not been successful in the town centre regeneration centre living fund applications. I wonder, Chair, if it's an opportunity then, because we've got another town centre capital fund report coming later on, to have a small seminar on the town centre issues that we're actually talking about. Probably not right away, but obviously there are things to get on with. But maybe either late in this year or early in the new year, have a seminar on the town centre issues that we're dealing with here.
I appreciate the suggestion. I think that'd be a very good idea. I'm conscious that this is new business to this, which is a new committee. Some members will have been involved with Communities Committee and be more familiar with it than others. And clearly there'll be members of EEI who have experienced issues with derelict buildings for an awful long time, indeed further back in the past. I think it would be a good idea. We could add it as 2.8 if members are in agreement. If there is no other member, I'll go to the recommendations. So at 2.1, we're asked to allocate an additional £24,065 from council tax and second-home income to the 2019-20 Town Centre Living Fund to support the delivery of new housing development projects described in this report. Are we content to agree that? For 2.2, we're asked to agree the allocation of £160,000 from the Town Centre Living Fund to Cunningham Housing Association to enable redevelopment of the former Lockerbie Academy site. Are we content to agree that? For 2.3, the allocation of £77,865 from the Town Centre Living Fund to Cunningham Housing Association for a feasibility study in relation to a community facility in the Albert Hall Annan. We are content to agree that. 2.4, allocation of £144,000 to Lawburn Housing Association to enhance the affordable housing development at the former Garrick Hospital site, Stranraer. We're content to agree that. And 2.5, the allocation of £142,000 to Lorburn Housing Association to support the affordable housing development at the former Scottish Power Yard, Brooms Road, Dumfries. We content to agree? At 2.6, the allocation of £120,000 from the Town Centre Living Fund to provide empty homes grant funding to R. McBride and Son to bring the Grade B listed building at 93 Irish Street back into use as 6 flats. Are we content to agree that? And then can we note 2.7, as this will result in the full allocation of the Town Centre sites budget, which is one element of the budget, on the Town Centre Living Fund. And at 2.8, can we agree that officers will make arrangements for a seminar on the Town Centre Living Fund, the Town Centre Capital Fund? Timing to be confirmed, but likely in the early part of the new year. Members are content with that? No sooner had I said I was hungry than it turned out that lunch had been delivered. I think this is an opportune moment.
Could I just beg your indulgence if we could take item 13 before lunch?
Item 13. Well, I am always indulgent of you, Councillor Scobie. We will move on to item 13. Thank you, Jamie. Item 13 is the Economic Development Asset Class Capital Programme 2019-20 to 21-22, report by Head of Economy and Development. This report provides members with information on the proposed Economic Development Asset Class Capital Programmes for 1920 to 21-22 and seeks agreement on the proposed spend for this period. Melissa McGarry and Simon Fieldhouse are here to answer any questions arising from the report. Is there anything that you would like to add?
Nothing to add, Chair.
Okay, I will open it to members' questions and comments. Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, Chair, and thanks for giving me my indulgence in taking this item. Could I say it's maybe not so much what's in the report as to what's not, and I had the pleasure of visiting Northern Ireland as a delegation along with yourself, Lorna, and Archie, where we met with colleagues from Mid and East Antrim Council. And what for me came out of the 2 days was what we had in common with our colleagues in Northern Ireland in that authority, and how indeed we could gain from some of the low-hanging fruit in some of the projects that were easy hits, and how we can develop those. And I think what we got was Northern Ireland, or that council, also recognised the important parts the ferries and the ferry ports play in the whole economy, both of the local and the wider economy, those being Belfast, Larne and Cairnryan. And they also recognised the importance of both the A77 and the A75, and how that plays a major part in the whole chain of events, and some of the exciting applications that they had made for funding and how we could feature in that. So, you know, in terms of the presentation, and it was spoken about during that 2-day, that we would get for the 43 members to share in both excellent presentations from the chief executives of both authorities, and that would be helpful if we could get that arranged. Chair, I noticed in last night's Free Press the artistic flavour of Councillor Justy in terms of what he sees as a bridge. I would see that there's more important issues in terms of the ports of Cairnryan, Belfast and Larne that we should be concentrating on, and no some Bojo Bridge. I don't know where it's going to take us to. Absolutely, John. But I think we've got to recognise the importance of Cairnryan in our strategic position, and we should recognise that in the economy in this particular report. That, you know, and there is talk about development at Cairnryan. There's been approaches, and I think we've got to sweat that asset as much as possible. No matter what comes out of the Brexit, whether it's a deal or no deal, and indeed where a border may or may not be. So in that respect, Chair, I hope we do recognise the work that was done over that weekend, those 2 days, and that we do try and recognise it in some form of report. So I'd hope that I would get the total support on that one. My other point is to page 301, and it's reference to the budget. There's a reference here. The budget also provides support to the SMART group, and I think we need some clarification on that, and indeed what the role of the SMART group is going to be in the whole development of the waterfront, the George Hotel, and various other aspects. And in terms of when it was first suggested that there would be a SMART group, and members were at the heart of that, I think we've got to understand where we are as local members and the protocol back to committee in terms of the whole development of that. If there is a reference to a budget, I would like to think that maybe the SMART group are going to take over the George Hotel, and it might get rid of all our pains in Stranraer, but I don't know if that's being suggested. But I think we need some kind of identity and clarification as what our roles are going to be in that. So again, thanks, Chair, for your indulgence, and I hope we can put Cairnine on the map, A77, 75, and answer the question on the SMART.
Thank you, Councillor Scobie. The visit to Northern Ireland was indeed very successful. I think we're all united in recognising that. And there is, without a doubt, I think, a positive working relationship there that both our councils can have. I understand, I am advised that the report and presentations you talk about will be the November full council. What I would suggest is that members will be entirely at liberty to amend allocations and to change plans in light of what we wish to do going forward to support that relationship with our colleagues in Northern Ireland. We should perhaps do it that way around. As regards the SMART group, but you'll recognise from the conversations that we've had that I believe, and I hope that other members will come to agree, that this is potentially a very positive and constructive opportunity, particularly for the west of the region, but for the whole of the region. I also understand that as regards the SMART group, there will be a report to the November meeting of this committee outlining what you have asked for. I think maybe, Steve, if you can confirm on that, or I see you nodding.
Chair, yes, certainly that's the intention, is to bring a report back on the future operation of the SMART grouping, including clarity around its role and purpose and reporting line back here. I'm also conscious that the lead member, I think, that was allocated to lead that group is not on this committee, but was previously on EEI. So that's something perhaps that Chair might need to be revisited.
Recognise, I think all these matters will have to be dealt with through the process of that report coming to this committee. Is there any other member? There are indeed. Councillor Hagman and then Councillor Crothers.
Thank you, Chair. I've got two questions, if I may. The first one is a relatively simple one, and that refers to the table on 302, which is the project undertaken by All Roads Lead to Whithorn. And it makes reference there to the Scottish Government Regeneration Capital Grant, and that it would be subject to funding of that. Do officers have any update on that we to put forward for the committee?
Yes, thank you. Yes, we received advice from the Scottish Government on Friday last week that the Whithorn project had been recommended to proceed to stage 2 application, and that we're going to be working with them closely to develop that application in time for the deadline in October.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Do we have a date of when the stage 2 applications might be made? Decisions. Obviously, we're at the very early stage, but is there a time frame for that one, just going forward?
Yes, it's 4 weeks on Friday, which is the October the 11th, I think.
So the decision on the stage 2 would be made on that, and it's the decision I'm looking forward to, rather than when the application opens.
Sorry, I beg your pardon, misunderstood. That's the deadline for the application. We understand that an investment panel will then meet during November, and then there will be decisions made thereafter. There is an indicative timescale provided on the Scottish Government website. However, our experience is that in previous years they've never stuck to that particular time frame. So we're using that as a broad guide in terms of the timescales that we're working to.
Thank you. That's useful, and I obviously want to wish them good luck with their application going forward. My second point was that same table starting on page 301 includes allocations as to proposals going forward. However, I'm just going through here, and the Sanker environmental improvements and the strategic employment sites, specifically the A74M, neither of those two have any costings associated with them, whereas all the other elements of that table have a figure attached to them. Will there be costings provided to members at a later stage, or can you update us on what the costings you're looking at there? It's just, I'm conscious that if I take the A74M site, it says this funding, doesn't say what funding or how much is there.
Okay, Melissa.
The A74M sites, that is the subject of a report coming to this committee later on in this agenda, which is an exempt item which covers what that request is for. The Sanker one, are we looking at Appendix 2 or Appendix 1?
No, I'm looking on page 303. It's just that I'm aware if we're looking at a table with funding, we need to be clear. And if there's reasons for that amount not to be in there, just to put that clear as to why.
Yeah, Chair, I think it's that the figure hasn't been put into the table. The table is just a summary of some of the key projects that are in the proposed programme. So the proposed programme details are in Appendix 1. So the costings for each of those projects is contained within Appendix 1. So I'll ask Melissa just to clarify the amounts that are allocated against those two projects that Councillor Hagman has mentioned.
Thanks, Steve.
Yes, thank you very much. Just for clarification, the strategic employment sites, the request is for 280,000, and for the Sanker, and again this is indicative, it will be subject to further detailed reports being brought back, is 1.265 million.
Okay. Councillor Carruthers.
Same page, Chairman. Langham Town Centre Improvement Scheme, and it references Scottish Urban Regeneration Forum. So that's SURF, I think it refers to further on in the report later on in regards to allocation, £60,000 report to come back. It clearly identifies that, I think maybe November. I just wondered, when that report does come back, I'd like to see the detail round about it. First time I've seen this organisation, I think, in the papers, unless I've missed them previously. So interested to see the detail of that as it comes back, just to make sure we get the reassurances that we do get a full and comprehensive report when it comes to that. Thank you.
Yeah, certainly, Chair. It's intended to bring a full detailed report on that project proposal that has been put to us by SURF.
Leader.
Sorry, Chair. I welcome the approach that's described in the paper with the development blocks, and indeed the fact that the 3 temporary posts within the team have now been filled, because I'm sure that will be of great assistance in taking some of this forward. I just wondered what the reporting mechanisms are going to be on progress, because I think that's also going to be important, that both members and communities can actually see what is happening. And I just wonder, are you going to have a projected timeline for some of these coming forward? How are we going to monitor what progress is being made, in particular in terms of how the blocks are rolling along?
Steve?
Chair, I think there are 2 or 3 different elements to how that will be monitored and reported. We will be bringing forward regular capital programme monitoring reports to this committee, explaining progress on individual schemes and across the programme as a whole. But in addition to that, we will also be, through the area reporting framework, providing updates on key locality or place-based projects within the remit of that particular area committee. So we will be looking to provide a local updating mechanism also.
Thank you, Steve. Members will go to the recommendations. At 2.1, we're asked to confirm that the proposals for expenditures and progress updates under the Economic Development Asset Class Capital Programme for 1920 to 21-22 should be set out as 6 thematic programmes as outlined. Are we content to confirm that? At 2.2, can we note the approach to bringing forward individual projects within the 6 programmes will now be set out in the form of 3 development stages or blocks? Are we content to note 2.3? And at 2.4, agree to the proposed allocations from the Economic Development Asset Class Capital Programme for each of these development blocks as set out in Appendix 1. 2.5, note the expenditures against this proposed programme from April to June 2019 as set out in Appendix 2. And 2.6, agree to receive further reports on progress on the development of this programme. Councillor Scobie.
Just for the record and minute purposes, could we agree that we will get a report on the Northern Ireland situation and with particular reference to the strategic point of Cairnryan?
Happy to take it as an operational action, but you'll recognise that it's being recorded right at this moment. It will go to full council in the first instance, not to this committee. So we can't instruct full council, but it is going there in November. Thank you. Thank you, members. We will break. I think it's an opportune moment. Back at 20 to 2.
Time. Nice. Declare the interest. All right. Good afternoon, members. Welcome back to the Economy and Resources Committee. And this one, the Chair has declared an interest, so I'll be taking this one, which is item 14, the Town Centre Capital Fund Report by Head of Economy and Development. Members will be aware that the Scottish Government has put in place a fund for local authorities of £50 million for the financial year 2019-20 for capital investment to stimulate town centre economies. Dumfries and Galloway Council has been awarded £1.529 million from this fund. And following a call for projects that was issued across services within our council and to communities via the ward officers, 27 expressions of interest for grant funding were received with a total value of £2.493 million. The report provides an overview of these expressions of interest, and the purpose of this report is to provide this committee with updated information on the expressions of interest received by our council in relation to the Scottish Government's Town Centre Fund Capital Grant 2019-20, and to seek this committee's agreement on the way forward. Melissa McGarry and Steve Rogers, he's sitting in the back one there. Simon is here. Unless you've got anything to add to the report.
Nothing to add, Chair.
Okay, so I'll open up for members. Henry?
Oh, that's it. Okay, thank you. Thanks very much, Chair. Just asking for a piece of clarity on the Appendix 1. It's the regeneration enabling works at Station Road, Annan. I'm just curious as to what the enabling works actually are, because I've noticed that development and works on that site's already commenced, and I'm just wondering if any of these awards are going to be retrospective in any means.
Sorry, we've also got Chris Churns here to answer that.
Sorry, thank you. This project proposal by Lobbourn Housing, so it is just an initial project proposal. We will go out to, if everything goes ahead, we will go out and ask them for a full application, in which point we will find out exactly what they're looking for, what they need, and where it's going to go to.
Will you come back, Henry?
Yeah, I'd just like to come back though on the question of retrospective. Are any of these grants going to be awarded retrospectively?
Aye, thank you, Chair, through yourself. No, there will be no retrospective awarding.
Sean?
Thanks, Chair. Mine's more a general point on whether the report looked at the schemes, etc., and there's a wide and varied range of schemes across the region. And in 3.3,
I agree that we probably need due diligence to look at some of these projects in more detail. The one thing, though, that I would like taken on board when we're actually, undertaking the due diligence, etc., is also as well, I think it would be very useful if it can also be identified which of these projects are actually already been endorsed by the council, because there is a range of projects. If I look in my own ward, for example, I certainly know that, notwithstanding the situation we had with Pennies last year that has allowed us to actually form the action plan for Annan and DG12, there is some of those projects that have been long-standing projects that within the Annan Master Plan, which was endorsed by this council 5 years ago. So I would expect some sort of weighting or priority afforded to projects that actually fit not only the projects in this region, but across the whole of Dumfries and Galloway, that actually are already a priority for this council.
Simon.
Aye, thank you, Chair. Yes, as part of that due diligence, we should ensure that obviously we look at the opportunities to further support projects that have already been endorsed by the council.
Okay, Doug then, Ian.
Thanks, Archie. Just looking for a bit of clarification on if there's an under allocation of the 1.529. So it looks as though some of these expressions will drop off in due course. If we actually don't reach that total, does that money stay with the council, or does that go back, or do we open up invitations for expressions of interest again to make sure that we use up that allocation from the Scottish Government?
Yeah, my understanding is this is a one-off payment from the Scottish Government on the town centre capital projects, and they have to be done by June next year. Is that right?
The projects need to be committed to in terms of contracts out by the end of March next year, but works can be completed up until August 2020. The funding provided, obviously, if we're unable to allocate all the funding, then there would potentially be some clawback. So we would be looking, obviously, at working to ensure that we maximise that fund.
Ian?
Just similar to the point, but it's probably the point that Councillor McClellan brought up, but it's probably been covered. You look at the recommendations, so we're agreeing to the appendix, page 3, 11, 12 and 13, but that's in principle, really. So we see the report coming back in November, is what you're saying, the due diligence is taking place. So the likes of the one discussed earlier in regards to the Annan, we'll see the level of detail in regards to that. At that point, we'll make a further decision in regards to actual funding allocations then, I take it?
Yes, Chair, through yourself, that's correct.
Thanks, Chair. And really hard to see the level of the amount of applications that are here. It shows this keen interest across the region.
I would agree with that. Members, if there's no further questions, can we go to the recommendations then? We're asked to note 2.1, note 2.2, agree 2.3, and agree 2.4. Are we happy with that? Okay, we'll ask Rob to come back in.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Members, next report, item 15, is a property buildings brackets other asset class capital monitoring report 2019-20. Report by Head of Economy and Development. This report provides members with an update on the progress of the capital programme for the non-schools property buildings asset class for the first quarter of 2019-20. The report updates on the agreed allocations and initial plan presented to Policy and Resources Committee in June 2019. Paul McCullough's here to answer members' questions. Paul, is there anything you'd like to add to the report?
Nothing to add, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. Open up then to members' questions and comments. Leader.
Just briefly, because I suppose the answer to it, but there's been, to be honest, quite a lot of erroneous information in the public domain about the ice bowl and what was wrong with the ice bowl. There's been, rumours that it wasn't tied properly. So maybe just to put it on the record to see what the work was that was done to the ice bowl.
Paul?
Okay, so the works at the ice bowl were identified as being required because of a lack of head restraint on the cavity walls. and there was further work done to reinforce wall tie arrangements across various panels within the building.
And this was because at the time it was constructed, the standards were different. Is it that not the case? Rather than that it was poorly constructed, it was actually being brought up to modern standards, is it?
Paul? So a bit of both, I would say. So at the time, there was some head restraint missing. However, the codes of practice changed and the wind loading changed. So at the point when the building was constructed, the wind loadings were less onerous. And when they were reviewed against current standards, there was a more onerous requirement, which meant some of the work had to be done.
Thank you, Paul. Any other member? Councillor Nicholl.
Yeah, it's 3.3.1. Additional heating replacement project at Crothers House has been added to the programme of works. Why was this not noticed at the start? Is it what changed during the process to make this necessary?
Paul? So the heating project at Crothers House, it's a twofold thing. One thing is that there are some control issues with the system. And the second thing is that there has been some works identified as being required to replace pipework that wasn't identified as being defective. Now, from the outside, you can't tell that the pipework's defective, but as works were carried out to cut into that pipework, it was identified that there was rot from the inside.
Rust.
Councillor Crothers.
Tenuous, Chair, but please allow me to ask this particular question because there's quite a bit of debate in regards to the council headquarters and the heating system and fit for purpose, and so I just wonder if I could maybe bring it up. Whether you can answer this or not, Paul, maybe it's for a future discussion, just to put it on the radar. So we have a number of genuine concerns being raised in regards to the temperature in this building across. Too hot, too cold, just right. We have this quite mixture. So in regards to getting this into order as we go forward, I wonder, have we got any indication to when we might get this sorted out, taking away the budget decision that was made in regards to put the heating on at the beginning of October? Forget about that, but I think we do need a heating system that brings us up to 21st century needs in this building. Do we have any update? I know it's tenuous to this, but it's relevant.
Thank you, Councillor Crothers. Paul?
So with regards to this building was included as part of the Dumfries asset plan and was programmed into the following financial year, so a year from now. Now, depending on the Dumfries asset plan, we'll come on to talk about surplus property. The building, the heating system here is obviously quite antiquated, difficult to control, and has a considerable amount of asbestos attached to it. But the proposal is that as we do the work to resolve the Dumfries asset plan issues, we would look to fix the heating system at the same time.
Thank you, Paul. Councillor Crothers, you want to come back?
Thank you. Thanks very much for that update and allowing that question to be answered, Chair. But I mean, simple things like TRVs, I thought would be a simple fix for some of these problems, especially when it comes to overheating. You'd think that would bring that, or even room stats, kind of individualised room stats. It wouldn't be overly expensive, but if it will be addressed properly in a year's time, that's different.
Paul? So just on that very point, what we're doing across the estate is looking at these types of issues and identifying where there are some quite quick and as you mentioned, inexpensive ways of fixing these systems. So we're rolling that out across the estate currently with our energy management team, looking at that, all of that. In addition to that, we've got a bit of work underway with regards the Scottish Government scheme for looking at heating systems and optimising the controls. So we'll bring a report back on that as the information becomes available.
Thank you, Paul. Members, can we go to the recommendations? Can we note 2.1 and agree the project variances as identified in the appendix? Thank you, members. Item 16 is surplus property Queensberry Square update, report by Head of Economy and Development. This report seeks committee approval for Queensberry Square offices to be declared surplus to requirements, supporting delivery of council budget savings, and that if agreed, this property would then be subject to the council's agreed disposal process. Paul McCulloch is still with us to answer any questions arising from the report. Paul, is there anything that you'd like to add to the report?
Nothing to add, Chair.
Okay, Members, questions, comments? In that case, we shall go to the recommendations. Are we content to note 2.1, note 2.2, note 2.3, note 2.4, and agree 2.5? That should definitely be agree. I recognise it's not what the paper says, but that should definitely be agree at 2.5. Are we content with that? Thank you. Moving on to item 17. Thank you, Paul. ICT and Business Systems Asset Class Capital Programme 1920 Monitoring Report, report by Head of People and Transformation. This report provides members with an update on the progress of the capital programme for the ICT Business Systems Asset Class for the first quarter of 2019-20. Graham McLaurin is here to answer any questions on the report. Graham, is there anything you'd like to add to the report?
Nothing, no, Chair.
Thank you very much. Members, questions, comments? Okay, we'll move swiftly to the recommendations in that case. Maybe the temperature is starting to become a little too severe for some of us. Are we content to note the financial and physical progress of the projects as outlined in the appendix? Thank you. Item 18, I have not been notified of any urgent business, so we'll move on to the next item in the agenda. Item 19, Local Government Scotland Act 1973. Do members agree to adopt a resolution to exclude the public from the meeting in terms of section 50A, brackets 4, paragraphs 4 and 6 of part 1 of schedule 7A of the Local Government Scotland Act 1973?